Here. Let's go ahead, Troy. Let's have your chamber report.
Part two. Hello and good evening, everyone. Still doing the mute thing. What, 4 years on from COVID, and I still forget to unmute. I'm gonna share my screen and talk a little bit tonight about annual performance. Our July did not stack up as well as it did to last year's, but better than the previous year. This yellow bar here in the middle, finally July gave us 4 years of data. It's down about 6 to 8% from the previous year in overall footfall. Anyway, so that is same thing with June as well. So still seeing some softness, probably also seeing some effects of the blazing hot July we've had, where there were many days where people just did not want to be out on the streets walking around. Moving on, we have published some information. If you have not registered for Locals Night, Friday, October 4th, please do so. If you picked up an Echo, there's a full page ad with this in there, letting everyone know how to register this year to become a part of that. And if you're one of the first 700 people through the gate after having registered, you'll get a free hat pin, a 2024 hat pin to festoon yourself with, especially those who are in need of extra flair. Also, return of Fest beer, the most popular beer at Oktoberfest is returning and also being canned. So it's become not popular for Icicle. No more tickets. We talked about doing the wristband thing this year. And then we are hiring for the approximate 100 people that we're going to need to help pull off Oktoberfest this year. We have about 47 applications in thus far. So we will also be at the street fair or block party with a booth there. So bring by your application and you are all welcome to use me as a reference. For our carvings for causes, this is the leader, the Bear Club sledding. He could be sledding into your heart if you bid higher than $550 right now. But he is a current high bid right now. We have raised about $1,800 that we'll be splitting between the Royal Bavarians and Oaken Dogs Animal Rescue as our two recipients this year for that fundraiser. So we've got until August 31st to go, so we may be able to raise a little bit more money. We have a little girl outside your doors there. She's still up for grabs. And then finally, I wanted to let you guys know that we are holding a training. This is something that I experienced. I went through this training when I was in Fisherman's Wharf. Pier 39 held it, and it knocked my socks off. And it's so boring, the name, exceeding customer expectations. We hear that over and over. How hard could it be? You greet people, you're nice to people, you know, but this training was amazing. Knocked my socks off. The things there are, I'm not going to read them out loud to you because I know you all can read, are the things that is covered in this 3.5-hour training. We're going to do one in the morning from 8:30 to noon, and then a second option, if you can't make the morning, you can do the afternoon session from 1 to 4:30. We're still trying to nail down the location for that because I've already outgrown the original one I had. So, but this is going to be free for chamber members. Like I said, really great training and helps put us all on the same page as a community that welcomes people all the time, to give our workers the tools to do a better job and to do a great job and to enjoy their job even better. And so that is all I had to share. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Troy?
I have a question. Troy, can any of my front office staff attend that training?
Can your front office staff attend the training?
Yeah.
Yes. The city is a member, so yes, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Depending on the venue, we may have to limit each member to a certain amount of people. But we're trying to get as many, and we might bring it back if the demand is such. Like I said, this is really great training, and I walked out there inspired, like wanting to help people. So, and I'm horrible. So, that's amazing. So I would, I'm going to try to get as many people to this training as possible. So, yeah.
Sounds awfully
Oh,
cool.
one last thing I can leave you with is that it is actually some of you may or may not know this, the 60th anniversary of the Bavarian theme in Leavenworth,
Right.
and the Seattle Times interviewed a bunch of us recently for an article, hopefully about that. So we're kind of waiting to see. So hopefully that will be hitting the paper soon to celebrate the 60th anniversary.
Did you say 50th or 60th?
60.
Okay, great.
Next year is the 60th anniversary for Royal Ladies.
That's
fun.
Yeah. Wow. All right, well, thank you. No other questions? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you,
Troy.
guys. I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you. All right. Selby.
Sure. So council, I'd like to introduce a couple people that are visiting tonight to talk about a wildfire experience that they went through this time last year. I ran into Sonny Weathers at the Northwest Regional Managers Conference back in March. Recognized that he was from Medical Lake, said, I think we've got something in common. We're both from fire-prone areas. So I asked if he and his mayor, Terry Cooper, who I didn't have a chance to meet, but I did sit in on a session with at the AWC conference, if they would be willing to come and talk about their experience with the Gray Fire in Medical Lake, and they agreed to. So that's why they're here. The Gray Fire was a wildfire that was started on August 18th, so we're just about at the 1-year anniversary. It burned until September 1, and by the time it was put out, it had burned 10,080 acres, 85 acres. It destroyed 259 structures, and it resulted in 1 death. So with that intro, I'll hand it over to Sonny and Terry, and thank you very much for coming.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll let Sonny go ahead and get us started. And the tag team here, we do have a few slides to help us stay on track. And so Sonny, if you want to share things.
You bet. Good evening, Mayor and Council for Leavenworth. It's a pleasure to be with you, Selby. Good to see you as well. Thanks for the opportunity to share. I'd like to start. I'm going to share my screen and share a video. Hopefully, my connection is good enough that you can get this video through. And then we've got some slides, and we'll share a little bit about that as well. Is that working?
Not yet.
Not yet. It says yours, oh, there.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to press play. Hopefully the...
We didn't plan for this. We didn't coordinate this. We've never practiced it. We haven't educated our citizens. So I think that's what struck me first, is that this is a mess and there's nothing I can do about it.
So August 18th, 2023, temps had been in the mid 90s for several days. We knew that a dry cold front was predicted that day, so a significant weather event with a red flag warning issued for high fire potential.
So I'd been in Cheney and was heading home about 2 in the afternoon. So just as I got to Four Lakes, I could see the huge plume of smoke, and so I was very concerned.
We got the first call, report of fire southwest of the city of Medical Lake, about 3 miles. Given the conditions that day, we had some extra staffing on, had a pretty quick response. First arriving units there in about 10 minutes. By that time, winds were sustained at 25 miles an hour, and relative humidity was in the single digits. Fuel, weather, topography was all in alignment for some pretty rapid fire growth.
Within hours, we had hundreds of law enforcement and firefighters just swarming to the area. It was a well-coordinated effort, and our first notice was evacuation level 3, so had little opportunity to prepare. And so all of those hundreds of law enforcement and firefighters, we just go door to door.
But what was really unique to Gray Fire is the number of values within that fire vector or the direction of travel. The challenge you have when a fire enters a city under those conditions is homes become another fuel and meat.
All right, well, I'm gonna pause that. I could share that link. It looks like there's a little bit of lag issues with that. So I can share that link so you guys can take a look at that video on your own time as well. I'll just get my slides started up here. Are those visible for everyone now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yep,
Okay.
that's great.
Excellent. So again, we really appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of our lessons learned from the Gray Road fire. These are some slides that we prepared to share, and it just gives a quick rundown of what we experienced, and then we've got a few takeaways and some action points that I think would be valuable for you in the circumstance, knowing that you are the most at-risk community in the state of Washington currently. And as far as we're concerned here in Medical Lake, our recovery is really expensive, and it takes more time than anybody really has to give it. And our hope is that you can garner some lessons from our takeaways and be better prepared than we were. We didn't realize exactly the risk, and so our hope is that you would be able to learn some of the lessons from our experience and not have to go through that learning curve all on your own. As Selby mentioned, August 18th, 2023, at the height of the fire, over 638 personnel were assigned in response. It was 10,085 acres, 240 homes, 326 total structures were lost, and we did have one fatality in the fire. Recovery is an expensive venture. So we have here just a quick rundown as far as cleanup goes. Trying to wildfires are not handled a lot like other hazards and disasters that strike, and so there is no organized cleanup effort that comes. It's everyone's responsible for their own square, and it's really tough to manage especially when you have density and fires it devastates so many homes. And so we had a mass cleanup effort to ensure abatement of hazardous materials was done safely and properly while protecting valuable natural resources such as our lakes and wetlands and aquifers. And we also had some infrastructure improvements that would replace private wells with quality municipal water and replace septic systems with sewer system and provide hydrants and really help to provide a connected network of roads. There's a lot of one way in, one way out scenarios, very, very dangerous and frightening. And we feel very fortunate to not have suffered more loss of life as a result of those conditions that we just didn't know how dangerous they were until we were in the midst of the disaster. And then lastly, looking at in every disaster, the challenge is how do you house those who are displaced from the disaster? And so looking at ways to not, especially a small community, and our economy is not, it's really dependent on our local residents. And when thousands of them are displaced, it weighs a very big toll. Looking at infrastructure resiliency and trying to improve things. Recovery is not something that, when you look at it, you don't want to just you don't want to recover back to the same level of risk that you faced prior to a disaster. And so looking at things that needed to happen now, improving capacity for access and evacuation and suppression efforts, things that we really want to see happen in the near future, building redundancy into our critical infrastructure, because those are community lifelines that we really need to, in order for people to come back and work on recovery, we need to restore those lifelines. And then also integrating and consolidating critical infrastructure systems. So we have a lot of interesting and divided, small networks, or different people are responsible for different portions of what really should be a unified and resilient infrastructure system. And so looking for ways to build that consolidation in and be smart about, is in the midst of disaster, it's not the right time to be sorting out the details. You really need that sorted out in advance. Another thing that's been very, very clear to us is the need to reduce risk and vulnerability. And so we've got important efforts required to reduce that risk and vulnerability, creating contingencies through backup power supplies. A lot of our facilities do not have backup power generation, our wells and and so, being able to make sure that we can still operate even in the absence of primary power sources, addressing policy implications to better protect future development, defensible spaces, and fire smart building materials that can really make a difference. We learned that overwhelmingly, homes that were built with fire resistant materials and that had defensible space fared so much better than those that did not. And then also educating members and neighbors to make meaningful investments in their own. So this is a mix of publicly and privately owned properties, and fuels reduction was not taking place well across the board. And ultimately, in our efforts, we were trying to make the fires more known for their remarkable recovery than for their devastating loss. That's been kind of a mantra of ours throughout the process, and we wanted to, and I think we've made some good inroads, but at the same time, opportunity to share with you tonight is to tell a story of what could be done to be better prepared, more ready, and not have to face as much of, and this could have been worse for us, not to say that this is a worst case scenario, that circumstances really were quite favorable. It could have been way worse, but we've just learned so much, and it's very important that we share those lessons with you, so that and that's kind of what we hear in that video too. You hear our chief saying that, you'd think that when these things come through that you're no longer going to face that kind of risk anymore, but it's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when. And we've seen these kinds of fires annually. I know that it's not foreign to you as well in Leavenworth, but the thing that just hasn't happened is it hasn't really actually come through town. And so these are some action steps, and I'll, Mayor Cooper, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. I know these are the talking points we kind of brought up, this notion of being ready and prepared and developing key relationships now. We were fortunate. We've kind of been in this building phase where we've been more engaged with our partners in the region, and but the key relationships that come to mind are the county emergency management. We don't, we're a small town, and we don't have a staff to manage all of these things in depth. And so having that relationship with our county emergency management team, which we were aware of, but we didn't really have, so but it's critically important to have a good relationship with your emergency management team, know who they are, and make them feel very comfortable in your spaces so that they can do their work and you can collaborate together. The other important relationships with higher government, the county and the state and the federal legislators and agencies. There's so much coordination that takes place in the recovery effort, right? And in the response, that part is very well organized, and it's really something to watch. It really is. It's an extraordinary response effort, highly coordinated. The resources are made available. The communication is great. But once that response settles down, recovery is not so organized and it's a little clunky. And so having these relationships, knowing who your partners are is really important. Local nonprofits and service organizations as well. That's where the magic really happens. Recovery is not, it's not really a government thing. Most of the recovery efforts happen from volunteers and through local nonprofits. And so having those relationships in place in advance, very important to know who those partners are in the community. They're going to make they're going to make the best connections for people, and you're going to be busy restoring government and its capacity to serve those critical lifelines. And of course, it goes without saying, with law enforcement and fire services, the more inroads you can have, the better that is for everyone. But additionally, what we kind of realized we were very grateful for the relationships we had with our health district while we were trying to protect our water system. The health district called us and said, "How can we help? And do you need a boil order?" And we can get all that stuff prepared. Just point and shoot. Let us know how we can help. So those key relationships are critical. I'll just pause here, Mayor Cooper, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Well, thank you so much. No, you're doing a great job of it. And those are all the things I was thinking of. One of the things Sunny touched on is the idea that when there's a hurricane or a tornado or a flood, the government comes in and cleans up the mess. The debris, the toxic debris that's left is managed by the government. And so that was our first thing that we learned. You don't realize that wildfires are not treated the same way. So people are expected to call your insurance company and clean up your mess. The other thing is with these wildfires, had that taken out our public infrastructure, city hall, schools, library, business district, we're going to be standing that up first. And the people are really kind of left to begin the recovery work themselves. And the nonprofits will come in and help. And we'll talk a little bit more about a long-term recovery group and the importance of that. Because they are the connector. The long-term recovery group is the connector between case managers that will come in. And so I think it's going to go one of three ways, really. It will hit your downtown, it will hit your residential area, or it will be both, or maybe it's just out in the timberland. When it's just out in the timberland, those don't impact you as much. But when it starts hitting public infrastructure and individual infrastructures, that's where you're going to have to really respond quickly. So having all of those relationships, as Sunny talked about, pardon my noisy air conditioner in the back. I'm actually in Winthrop vacation right now. I'm so sorry if that's loud. But having those relationships at the county level, with your state legislators, know them, be on a first name basis with your sheriff, whoever your police is, your legislators, local nonprofit organizations, encourage them to be part of your community, encourage them to be part of your government, your school district, your anchor institutions. We do have large state institutions with vulnerable adults, state mental hospital. We have a hospital for developmentally disabled. And so knowing that they had the shelter in place, they were trying to evacuate. We didn't know their evacuation plan. So all of these things we had never talked about. And so, and then the health district too, became a very important role when you're talking about this toxic debris cleanup. And so the next thing I think Sunny will want to chat about is our funding. So in Okanagan, they've had in the last 10 years, so Okanagan County have been kind of modeling our long-term recovery group after their long-term recovery group. You say, well, why is that important? in Okanagan, starting with the Pateras fire, they've had 4 major fires in 10 years. So if it's happened once, it will happen again. And when you know that you're in a high risk area like we were, and we didn't know it, everyone else knew it. Southwest of Spokane, that's where it's going to start. It's probably going to head right towards Spokane. That's the way the wind blows. All of those in emergency management knew that. We did not know that. Now we do. And so it's connecting with them, talking about that risk and finding out, boy, if that fire comes from this direction and it were to take out this part of town or this part of the business district, how would people, what's our exit strategy? How do we educate the public on how they get out? And maybe I'm getting ahead here a little bit, Sunny, but the funding, going back to the funding part, is the most important, because the very first thing that happens the minute that disaster happens, recovery begins. And recovery goes in these stages, and these are things everybody knows, that you don't know it until you need to know it. And so you have to have money to spend immediately. There's things happening. You have to call other cities to help you, other counties to help you. You have to start paying for things immediately. And so we decided that we needed about 10% of our, annual budget, that we are going to set those dollars aside. And so we have set aside B&O tax for that, but having money available to spend is super important. I'll send it back to you.
Oh, thanks, Mayor Cooper. Yeah, that's ultimately we thought in the midst of these great disasters, right? This is what government was established for, responding to organic needs and its populace. And so we really thought, okay, we're in over our heads, but help is on the way. And so we kind of anticipated that help and that funding was going to be coming from elsewhere. And what we learned is that recovery actually happens from the ground up. And so we were unprepared. We didn't have the money to help with recovery as soon as it was needed. We knew we needed it. We were asking for those resources, but the speed of government is nobody's favorite speed when it comes to recovery. They want it to come sooner than that. And so what we learn and what we recommend and what we're practicing now is to have a disaster recovery fund as part of our budget. And if this happens again, when this happens again, we can start meeting needs immediately with those funds. And when we run out of funds, we'll go to the county. But we're asking the county to do the same thing, set up some funds, and then the county can step in when our resources are thin, and they can help meet those needs until the state can get organized and bring some resources in. And similarly, when the state gets towards the end of their rope, then we can ask and expect that FEMA may be getting involved. But the higher up you get in government, the longer it takes for those resources to get corralled. So having something locally is of critical importance. And if we would have had that right out the gates, we'd be far ahead in our recovery efforts today.
In regard to your 10% that you reserve, was that your entire budget, your general fund, enterprise fund?
So we identified that after the fire, and that is a line item that was set up. It's called Emergency Response Fund. And we diverted some of our B&O tax to that fund. It's one of those taxes that can be used for, not as restrictive. So we designated to that and said, until we get to 10% of our annual budget, we'll put that amount in there every year. We thought it would take us a few years to get up to that spot and then kind of reassess it from there. But we realized we didn't have dollars immediately. When the other important thing is declaring that state of emergency immediately. Ask your county, you'll have all your county partners asking them to declare a state of emergency, and your health department to declare a health emergency. And there's smoke, there's toxic debris on the ground, there's all of these things happening. And that was one of the things we missed. And later when FEMA came in, there were dollars that we had to leave on the table because we had not received the health department declaration. So there's a lot to learn. And we want you to know, we don't want to take up so much time in your meeting, but feeling like you're really in a critical place, we do want to try to cover as much as you're wanting to hear, but we are putting together a disaster mitigation manual. We received some grant funding. We are doing a thorough deep dive on everything that we learned and putting this together as a manual that can be saved for, shared with other small cities and counties. So that will be coming. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and that 10% is, we went off our general fund budget, general fund revenues. So that, yeah, 10% of that. So in Medical Lake, our recovery fund is our goal is to fund it to $300,000.
Do you guys have lodging tax, and did you use any of that?
So we do not have any hotels, motels, and not a lot of we're actually just getting up to speed with Airbnbs and temporary lodging type scenarios. So we do not have lodging tax revenues. All right, I just to get on to some of these other topics as well, looking at familiarizing yourself, moving into preparation, familiarizing yourself with your hazard mitigation plan. It's that's really important. It's that's not just something that you should have on a shelf and check the box and say, yep, got it, we're good. Like, you need to be really familiar with what that plan has, what risks are in there. Those mitigation strategies should be something that you're actively planning for and budgeting and managing, because it really isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so the resources that are available to you, we highly encourage that you're taking that seriously. Ours is very generic. We're annexed into our county hazard mitigation plan, and what we gave to it was very minimal, and we interacted with it in a very minimal fashion. And so fortunately, there's a lot of intuitive elements inside of that, but the more specific that hazard mitigation plan can be, and the more direct you can be, at least being understanding the roles that you play and how that's going to play out. Maybe some tabletop exercises where you get key players together and you talk it through, so that you're not doing it for the very first time in the midst of a disaster response. Very, very important element. And so that involves risk assessment and hazard mitigation strategies, and understanding the response and recovery framework. If you're not familiar with incident command system and how that works, and knowing what community lifelines are, because you'll be the ones responsible for restoring those. So the National Disaster Response Framework is a great resource, and it's accessible. But if I would just tell you from where I sit right now, I would much rather have been familiar with that before essentially sleepless hours saying, how do I get ready for tomorrow, when I feel like I'm already weeks behind in the conversation. So I see a hand up.
Hey, Sonny, Travis McMaster, council member. Wish I could be there live. Do you have before or after this? Is there a binder that's your go-to? All right, it's go time, and now it's making the, like you said. And I've been to some small city connector with the mayor and Selby and Roslyn, and you're right. It's the afterward stuff that's like, it costs $100,000 to lift that helicopter up to do one more payload of fire retardant, and you make that call, the city's got to pay for it. Anyways, do you have a binder that's like, not a step-by-step, but it's got the numbers in it? It's the go-to in these situations. Is that how it works?
So we're working on it for sure. And that was, and as odd as this sounds, like from the moment that we were in it, we've been talking about the need to scrapbook our experience, right? Because of why you're asking. So it's not a very well-developed scenario, but yes, everything that's happened to us, we took notes. I'm a binder guy. I love my binders. I go nowhere without my binders. I got And so I appreciate that because my mind can be a jumbled mess, but I can organize the information I need in a binder and it's readily accessible. So that is the plan. We're working with the state. We're trying to get state emergency management who is really good at helping you do disaster assessments and understand what you've lost and how to value it. But what your needs are in that, like your needs are, how do I facilitate recovery in my community? And that is not something that's super clear. There's a lot of states that have great guidebooks, but our goal is to see the state task our state emergency management with preparing a guidebook. Every disaster is unique to its own community, but generally speaking, the steps and stages of recovery are very predictable. And it may take you longer to get through step one than it does someone else, but step one is still step one, and step two is step two, and those phases and cycles. And as long as you can know it, right? I just know how I am when I'm traveling somewhere I've not been before, and my wife is playing navigator. I'm asking her to give me the next two steps. Tell me the next two turns I need to make because I don't want to miss my turn, and I want it to be efficient, and if I don't feel like I know what's coming, I feel like I can't be prepared for it. So that's the very sentiment that we've been trying to work towards so that we can share a resource with all of our partner cities across the state to say, put this binder on your shelf and be familiar with steps 1 and 2. You don't have to have it all sorted out, but if you know what's coming and how to react initially, it'd be really valuable.
No, that's great. And from my understanding is FEMA is caring more about wildfires kind of starting more recently, the more recent, which is good. So
That's true.
getting a hold of them, when you get a hold of them in the timeline, that this binder kind of this flow of like, okay, they're your first call or they're the second call. Yeah. So that's great. That's great.
So you'll find that, as Sunny was saying, that we have to think about it in reverse. So we learned that we thought big disaster called big government, and it's exactly the opposite. What do you have in your hand and what do your people need now? Because the faster you can roll things out. And so you're going to have, your power goes out, the phone lines burn down, there's no internet. There's no phone, there's no, all of this stuff is going everywhere. It's all going down in your sewer. Who's managing all of that? How are we getting people out of town? Those are the first things. How do we protect people and property? How do we protect city assets? How do we begin to make order out of this chaos? And as Sunny said, it will happen exactly in that immediate response. There was a fire that happened in Elk the exact same day. They don't have a city. They're all rural. They had 123 homes that burned there during the same time frame as Medical Lake Fire. They started within hours of each other. And they looked at Sunny and I go, you guys look pretty capable. So we're going to go help them up north. we kind of looked at each other and said, oh, I guess we're capable. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We figured it out. And so now we want to help with the idea that a regular kind of way, the emergency response. There's this flood of people that come in to help with water and food and clothing and housing and medication and hearing aids and all those things. In 5 weeks, they all leave, and you're standing there in total devastation and utter silence, and you think, we don't know what to do next. It really feels like that. And that's where we're trying to legitimize these long-term recovery groups because they will take community leaders who then connect with the nonprofits, who then connect with these national organizations. So when that 5-week mark hits, you have people helping people. And if you have lost your public infrastructure, like I said, your focus is going to be standing up government, and you won't be able to help people. We're having a pretty remarkable recovery because we did not have to stand up government. And and we have a lot of things happening, infrastructure happening in our city right now because we're trying to kind of build from nothing. But it's like, Sonny, you take care of the city and I'll take care of the fire stuff, and let's keep this going. But the things that you don't think about those were the things that I think are important to me. What's happening? Do we have backup generator, water system, wastewater system? What's happening? And there's training that can come for your public works people, that will be so valuable.
Another key piece of being prepared is educating your community. So evacuation levels was something that, generally everybody understood, but what nobody was prepared for was that it was the heart of fire season, and and we knew the Tuesday prior to August 18th, which was a Friday, that Tuesday, our fire chief stood and gave his public safety report and said, Friday is going to be the most dangerous fire weather of the year. And so they were prepared for it, but even still, our people weren't prepared for it. So knowing that what those evacuation levels mean and how to be adequately prepared at each one of those levels, having a go bag ready, it's fire season and we're at risk. Don't wait until you get evacuation level 1. The first notification we got in Medical Lake was evacuation level 3, go now. So there wasn't time to prepare. So making sure people understand and they're aware of those evacuation levels, that's easy education. And just saying, take it seriously, because you'll be sorry if you don't in the midst of the disaster. The other thing is having emergency evacuation plans. We're a city that is it's connected by a state route, highway, State Route 902. And so we've just always figured like, oh, it's a highway in and a highway out, and I-90 is not that far away. It's super easy to get in and out of Medical Lake. Well, not when 5,000 people are trying to leave at once. There were people who sat in their cars in the highway and thought, well, I'm supposed to be evacuating, but I'm going to die in a fire in my car on the highway because the roads got jammed up. And we couldn't evacuate to the south because the fire was to the south. So we had one of our main escape routes was under construction, and so it was closed off. And there we are in this circumstance, just trapped. So having those evacuation routes, understandable. And then training to defensible space. That's another thing that no one ever thinks about it until after the fact. But even this year, we've had a number of fire startups in the West Plains area, and the story every time is those homes that have defensible space fared just fine in those fires. The ones that didn't were lost. And so the evidence is overwhelming. The practice is proven, and there's resources available with DNR to do 50% cost matching and help people reduce fuels and make their properties more safe from fire. Any questions on that? I just have a couple more quick points, and I'm happy to address any questions. I don't want to take up too much time, though.
We have a solid another half hour, Sonny, so.
Okay. All right. So that's the preparation piece, the education of city staff and key personnel, and the education of the community. And then moving on to advocacy is what the mayor was talking about earlier as well. We're trying to say that there's a way we could be more prepared. I don't know what the circumstances in Leavenworth, but in Spokane County, we did not have a long-term recovery group set up, and it takes time to get that to happen. So what we're advocating for, and what you can help us advocate for, is a statewide long-term recovery group. It's not that hard to do. It's something simple. It's from the ground up again. There's plenty of communities that have been devastated by wildfire and have experience with long-term recovery groups. And all we're asking for is that the state would resource mobilizing people from those communities to be able to come together, because recovery starts the same time the disaster starts, but it's not resourced like the response is. And so being able to bring together a long-term recovery group who can set that up on day one and act, and resources can be given to that long-term recovery group, and they can show up and say, hey, point me to your community leaders, connect me with your nonprofits, and I will take care of that while you stand up your government, while you reconnect those community lifelines and make that magic happen. You do you, and we'll set up this long-term recovery group, and we'll train your community members to take over. And as soon as that training has taken place and we can leave, you're only ever a phone call away, but you have an acting long-term recovery group. It took months and months for us to get organized and set up as to how that should function and what it should look like, even though we had best practices to follow, even though we had great partners to come in and tell us how it works and coach us through the process. Even through all of that, I think, and Mayor Cooper, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was over 6 months before we had the 501c3 status so that they could receive funds and start to meet needs. So that 6 months, if we wouldn't have had to wait for that 6 months, we would have been, we'd been 6 months ahead in the recovery efforts. So I'll pause there because I know Mayor Cooper is a champion for the long-term recovery group. She serves as the president of the long-term recovery group for the Spokane region. And so I'll let her share some sentiments that way.
Sonny, I think you covered that really well. What we're trying to do at the state level, and you'll see this will come before the state legislature this year, is asking that it be acknowledged at the state level, because government is not, other than commerce will give money sometimes to nonprofit groups to do specific things. But we really ran into the problem where I called the governor, said this toxic debris, we have a shallow aquifer, we have lakes on both sides, we have streams, we already have forever chemical problems with PFAS. That's what's going to happen with this toxic debris, and we need to get it cleaned up quickly. And he agreed with me, and he funded that. It was 6 months. The money was released within a month of that request. It was 6 months before $1 actually reached a person because of the bureaucracy. We have layers of administrative people with really great hearts. They're really trying to do good government work, but it really gets in the way of recovery. And if we really want to build trust and confidence with the community, we need to get the money to the community. And you'll find that at the lowest level, your citizens will hold each other accountable. Those community leaders will hold one another accountable. But it's really the national model, and they're working on making this a nationally known and nationally recognized function. These long-term recovery groups, they're all 501c3s, and they work with new terms you'll learn: VOADs and COADs, right? Volunteer organizations active in disaster, community organizations active in disaster. But these are mostly Christian groups that they live and exist and fund disaster recovery because they know the government doesn't do, government shouldn't do it. I mean, people should help people. And so they do. And so that's really what we're working on. And then also trying to get these dollars pre-funded so they're available. So when the disaster happens, they go directly to these long-term recovery group. And so for instance, the Spokane group, our idea is that that money could come directly through us. We can come to your community or any county, the 39 counties. I think there's only 4 long-term recovery groups, but we need one in every county. So that's the idea. Stand them up, get the money into their hands, and get them helping their community. And then also asking the government to pay for the toxic debris testing and debris removal. That's a big deal. It's going to cost about $8 million when you have a disaster of our size and 2 different fires in the county on the same day. But just like tornadoes or anything else, the government should come in, give them that first 5 weeks, you sift things, you kind of get your legs under you, and then the government says, okay, we have a grid, and we're going to come in and we're going to start testing and packaging up and hauling off. We had trees, and I know Leavenworth, I've been to Leavenworth, you would have the same trouble. We had tens of thousands of trees. DNR comes in and cuts them down. The utility comes in and cuts them down, gets them away from anything that's a structure or a power line. And it looked like pixie sticks, but these trees were 100 feet tall and 3 or 4 feet across. And how do you expect a person to deal with that when a arborist will charge you $1,000 to $2,000 per tree. So you have to go in mass. The government needs to pay for it. And I'm only belaboring it because it is a big ask that Washington State began to set aside those dollars so that we can resource those. We have access to those when we have these kind of emergencies. Wildfires, when we were at the AWC conference, wildfires have increased exponentially 400%. And once you've, had a wildfire, it just increases more. We had never had one. This is important to you in educating your community. We had never had a wildfire. We had fires all the way around, but most people had the sense that, yeah, I'll grab my pillow, my couple papers and the dog, and, we'll be back because the firefighters had done such a great job of, they bring in the planes, they bring in the helicopters, but that day there was nothing that was going to stand against this fire. It was too smoky, too windy, couldn't get the air support, and it was blowing so fast that when that perfect storm comes, people had that false sense of security. And so educating the community is really important. But again, when it happens, you want that long-term recovery group, and you want those government dollars to come in and be organized and clean up the debris, because it's so overwhelming. We had, just from cleaning up one group of trees, we had probably half a football field, 15 feet high, packed with that was just the limbs, and we had to bring in shredding and things that we wouldn't have thought about. So moving on.
Gary,
Sonny.
what's your example of a long-term recovery group? Can you describe one of those?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question. The long-term recovery group, when you put those together, you identify your community leaders, and you identify especially the community leaders that would be connected in post recovery work. So for instance, we have Inovia, which is our Northwest Foundation, and they're a philanthropist group, and I said that wrong because I always will, but basically they're the nonprofit that funds nonprofits. And then we have a Vista, we have aging and long-term care. These are all like executives that come from those organizations. We had 3 representatives from the elk community. We had 3 representatives from the medical aid community, a church from each community, a nonprofit group from each community who was the liaison. And then the state had funded some disaster case managers. If they had not, the disaster case managers, maybe through Salvation or some other organization, would also sit in that group. And that group, once they're formed, their job is to do outreach in the community, find every person who has a need. They qualify them, like, what was your position before the fire? Where are you now? What did your insurance do? Did you have insurance? What are your gaps? And then how do we reach out to these other organizations, other people in the community, to help you basically get back in a home? Or be positioned so that you can, get your legs under on you and begin to rebuild your life. Because after losing everything, it's hard to imagine what that feels like. But that's what the long-term recovery group looks like. We met weekly at the beginning, and then we moved to meeting twice a month. That's where we meet now, is twice a month. We have an executive director, a treasurer, president, vice president, and then all the others just serve as board members. But mostly our agenda is about what kind of work is happening. So for example, we are 1 year out, and right now we're working on rebuilding homes. A Mennonite group came in called Christian Public Service. They come, they pay all their own expenses, they stay a year, they bring 5 skilled laborers, and they were building houses. So we took donated dollars. We worked with other local organizations to get the materials and get the concrete and get a couple of project managers and all of these things. So we have 8 houses right now we're working on. This week we're building 5 pump houses. And then there are other unmet needs. Anything that's an unmet need can be brought to this group. and shared out with these national VOADs. We invite them to our meetings and they might say, yeah, we'll help that person. They need $10,000 because that's what they were short. They have no means to finish their house and they have a disabled child. So it's all of these individual needs. I hope that answered your question, but it's an organized way to reduce duplicity of services. And especially when you start working with state dollars and with FEMA dollars, it becomes a big deal. They're not going to give you, they're reluctant to give people money if they're not in some sort of an organized system where they're tracking what dollars have you received, what help have you received. And don't count on FEMA and don't count on the state. But like you said, I think we're going to see the state and FEMA becoming more active, and they want an organized group, working through case managers, helping these folks. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that gave me a pretty good idea. The long-term recovery groups, are they what I kind of hear you saying is that they need to be established so that when the state does have money to give you, or FEMA has money to give you, you already have a receiving group that's nonprofit and can track the money. Is that kind of the essential part?
It's more tracking the people and the resources together. And
Okay.
when FEMA came, we'd already, which was very unusual, they came in February. So they arrived in March, and of course the fire happened in August. And so FEMA wants to know what kind of help have you received when they interview a person. And FEMA will only offer certain kinds of help. The state would only offer certain kinds of help. But where the long-term recovery really came in so strongly in this particular fire is working with the state government to say it needs to look differently. State money should be used to do more than what you allocate it to do. And so you'll see these long-term recovery groups are going to become more active, probably politically, in trying to, as I kept having this conversation that said, okay, state emergency management, I think where we're at an impasse is that I understand you're telling me the way the world is. I'm trying to tell you how the world should be in this recovery because we need to do better. And so it's a message that's beginning to be heard. But the long-term recovery group, if it can be funded and be kept funded, so at least minimum staff and community outreach can continue in between events, then you're ready, because we want to stand ready.
So you're saying this should be established before the crisis?
It would be best.
Right.
I will tell you that, as Sonny tried to make the point, and I think he did a good job of it, we're all so busy, and it sounds like a good thing, and it seems really important, but it's really hard to say, and we're going to stand up a long-term recovery group. I think that it's most effective to at least have it started or know that it's important, understand what it is, and then if an event happens, the government, the state, or county to county should deploy a long-term recovery group to come right into your community, find your nonprofits, find your faith-based organizations, find your anchor institutions, and draw leaders from all of those and put that together, get their paperwork filed for them, and then they have a mentor to help them through the next.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Did you guys lose access to your city hall and public works facilities?
We did not. But Sonny can tell you that City Hall and the public works facilities immediately became overwhelmed because they weren't impacted. And the wastewater treatment plant and the public works for sure. They were full, all hands on deck, just trying to clean up debris, help get the streets cleaned up as the trees, and debris were everywhere. And the wastewater treatment plant, I'd never even crossed my mind what happens when you have sewer, where the house burns down, the water lines burn, the sewer lines burn, and everything's spewing everywhere, and it's all draining into wastewater treatment plant, and we managed it, but it was about 36 hours straight of just trying to hour by hour make the adjustments to deal with the toxins and to get our reservoirs up and cap off things. And we had a lot of helpers that came, didn't we, Sunny? I don't know
We
what else
did.
you want to say to that end.
Yeah, no, it was, I just, really quickly on the long-term recovery group, as kind of an outsider, I've been engaged and worked with them, but I've not been on the inside. But essentially what it does is it acts like an incident command system for response, but it's for recovery. It's not as resourced, but it's built to do that same thing. So they have a logistics committee, they have an immediate needs committee, they have a finance committee that essentially gets all the right pieces in the right places, and then they meet to discuss those needs and put resources where they'll make the most impact. And then I would also point out that the Spokane Region Long-Term Recovery Group was established in such a way that they're not going to dissolve when the Gray Road and Elk Road fire recovery is complete. They're going to stay an active organization so that whenever a future disaster comes, they're already in place and they'll just start to function for that disaster recovery as well. And as far as yeah, it was overwhelming. We're a lean staff, and it was just, I mean, from the moment that it happened so fast, we had to evacuate our park to make sure that people weren't in the path of the fire. By the time that was completed, the fire had overwhelmed the park, and our maintenance building was catching fire, and we were trying to ferry equipment down the road and out of the way so that we weren't losing our infrastructure and our tools and equipment. And and then right into the evening, as far as the homes that did burn down, trying to shut the water lines off so that we weren't losing levels in our reservoir and going negative pressure in our water system. So many things that in a normal day aren't a concern, but in the midst of a disaster, it just jumps right in your face. And I don't know how many hours it was without sleep and without stop. It was too many. But that was just because the needs were there and there's no one else to serve those needs. Fortunately, we had a great team who was willing to sacrifice the hours and do everything possible to save the resources that we had. And communication was working very well. But it was, I feel like it's because we were more lucky than prepared. Last point that I think is a really key action step or takeaway is the communication piece. So emergency notifications registration, that was something that we learned in here in Spokane County. There is a registration for the emergency notifications. Not everybody always gets them. In fact, the mayor and myself both did not get the emergency notifications the first time they came out. It really was only later that it finally, so there was some failures in that system, and being able to educate people how to register and how those notifications come through, very, very important. Similarly, the ways you communicate with your citizens as a city, if you have push notifications with or email scenarios, like we lost power, and so it was we had to kind of try to work remotely where we could, get staff who was evacuated to find a hotel and log in remotely and be able to communicate through social media. And we didn't have push notifications through text, but we're establishing that system now so that we can better communicate with our citizens in the midst of those disasters, because what they need is information, and they need verified and confirmed information from trusted sources. The rumor mill takes over, and it really doesn't help anybody. But when you can communicate through official channels, it gives people the peace that they need, the confidence that they need to be able to act appropriately and safely. The other thing, as far as communication goes, is understanding how to interact with your incident command liaison. There'll be a management team that comes into town to manage that incident, and they're very professional and they're very skilled and they know what they're doing, but they don't know your community like you do. And Mayor Cooper was a great connection point, and we made sure that we had somebody from the city at every one of the community meetings so that we could give the community perspective. And when they were talking about evacuation levels and expanding or retracting those boundaries, that was a conversation we wanted to be part of, because we knew where the sticky points in our community were, and we wanted to make sure that all of those details were considered well. So those professionals know how to facilitate those conversations, but they need champions from the inside, and that's you, being able to communicate with them what the needs are in your community, because nobody knows it better than you do. So, Mayor Cooper, you have anything you want to add as far as communication piece?
I think that just made me think of the traffic flow. So what a normal traffic day might look like depending on what day of the week or this week that this is happening. So you have festivals. I mean, your city is unique in so many ways. You have to have all these incidents. We had 600 incident command people on the ground within 24 hours. They're there to, you know, save the day and save lives and save property, but they have no idea about the traffic, who's coming to town that hasn't heard about it yet. We had 3 state institutions that had 24-hour care. They operate like hospitals. The incident command folks, they didn't know that. I said, so you have everything locked down and you're patrolling the neighborhood so there's no looting. But in about an hour, we're going to have 200 cars leaving and 200 more cars coming back. We'll have 400 cars. How are they going to get through, and how do we take care of this vulnerable population? But only people that live there know that. And so think about those things that only you would know. And I would say having Sonny and I at every incident command, those first 3 days, we were there every minute, and we were at those 6 a.m. briefings. And don't leave that to your emergency management. You be there, because your mayor and your city administrator must be there, because you have to be the voice for the people, and the emergency, we're there to really know what our community needs. I think that was the only important thing that came to mind right there. You covered it very well.
So just to kind of wrap up, what we wanted to share with you, there's a lot more to the story than just what we've presented here with these few notes. But this was designed really to meet you. The challenge that was posed to us is, how would you communicate what can be done to a community that hasn't experienced that disaster before the disaster strikes, right? Like, we now know what we wish we would have known before the disaster hit us with the Gray Road fire. And so that was really our intent, was to try to meet you where you're at today, pre-disaster, with steps that you can take. There's way more to the story that hours and hours wouldn't really help give us the time to address. But what I could tell you is, and we learned this as well, those who've been through it before will be there to help you navigate through those steps. But right now, you have the opportunity to prepare, to make yourself ready, to advocate for better policies at the state level and county level, and locally, and to make sure that those communication channels are in place and that you're ready when that happens. You're more prepared than we were, and I promise you that if you'll take those steps and take that seriously, you'll be in a much better circumstance to be able to recover and redefine the benchmark for what recovery looks like in your community.
Oh, very good. I would say one last thought that just came to my mind, because we had this false sense of security, because the firefighters just do such a great job, and the emergency management does such a great job, and the police, fire, everybody came. So we had, our high school was our evacuation center. That lasted about 2 hours, and then they realized that's a threat. So now they moved the evacuation center to Cheney. So all these people, they ended up that bust, So it was like, we have an evacuation center, and we got to move in 2 hours. We need every STA bus that's available to get out here, because we have hundreds of people that we got to move now. So they then sent them to Cheney High School. Well, then the wind shifted, and then Cheney was also at threat. And so they were there about 2 or 3 hours, and then they had to then shift and say, now where do we send them? And so again, they bus them up to Spokane Falls Community College in Spokane. So I would say something that I learned is whatever plan A is, and that's our safe place. You should immediately have something 5 miles farther and then 5 miles farther, because that's what we found. We ended up actually having to get people about 15 mile away for them to be safe. And something that no one had thought about, our anchor institutions, those hospitals, they tried their evacuation plan. It didn't work. They ended up sheltering in place, which is the most terrifying thing that you can do. And it worked, and they were safe, and they were well, and we managed it. But be thinking about what's plan A, B, and C, because if that's your evacuation center, and what if it quickly begins burning too? And that's what happened with the and then the other big thing that came up was broadband. You instantly also have no internet service, and everything is, I mean, that's where people get their news. That's where they get their alerts, between their phone and their internet. We didn't have any internet. It all burned. We had 40-year-old coax in the ground. It melted. And I know you're a robust business district, and you probably have a high level of internet, but I would say be mindful of where those are sourced, and how you get your internet, and if a fire came through, what's going to burn down. The folks up in Elk, it's a year later, all the telephone poles burnt down, and CenturyTel said, sorry, we're not coming back. And that was their only source of internet and phone. They've been a year without internet. And the number one thing that folks need the minute the fire happens, but for sure during the recovery period, they've got to have internet. Everything from the state, FEMA, local, all those communications happen through the internet. And you probably have a lot of rural people around your area, and they're going to be without internet, and it's pretty critical. And there are ways to have these temporary units called cows, cell on wheels, and they can stay in place for up to 20 years. They do a great job of getting a Wi-Fi signal out, and especially during an emergency, you can pay to have one of those deployed, set up, so that we didn't have internet either, at City Hall. So for you and then for your community to have internet is going to be critical. So,
Make sure that's in the binder.
We're working on
That's what
it.
I'm talking about. That's good stuff. That's good.
Yeah, we're working on it. And
Wow.
like Sunny said, we're so excited about this project. And and I think the final thought, when everybody came to help, right? Day 5, everybody came to help. And it really was like drinking from a fire hose. People who've been through it before, and how it hit their city and their long-term recovery groups. And it's so much information. It's really becomes information overload, but we're hoping this binder is going to be kind of put in those steps. So you can say, oh, they're talking about like a few weeks from now, or a few, and we'll get there. But thanks for telling me that. But right now we're focusing on these 4 or 5 things, and it'll help you, because we were completely over. It was like, you feel like you have to know all of this, but you don't need to have to know all of it right in the very first minute, and you couldn't. So
That was amazing. Thank you so much for giving that information out right from the heart. And I happened to be on my way to a grandson's marriage and went through that area at that time, and took the highway department a bit of time to get everything sorted out so we could get through, but they did. I guess they're just knowing all that information and trying to even think it out or follow it. That was amazing report from you two. Thank you kindly.
well, it's absolutely our pleasure, and we want to help. And if when the time, if, and I hope never, but if it were to come, you know that we will be a resource for you. And but you know, our thoughts and prayers are with you as we make it through, all of us make it through the rest of this fire season. As we know, every year we're at a greater risk, and we're all in it together. And so we appreciate you taking the time to hear from us. So thanks so much for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Sarah.
coming, Mayor.
Thank you,
Thanks, Sonny.
Sonny.
Yeah, thanks, son.
Okay, God bless. Have a good night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sonny, please do send me the YouTube video and I'll share that with.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we like to have that.
And Travis wants to see that binder when it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hot
No,
off the
that's great.
press.
I'll send that link in right now, so I don't forget. And yeah.
Are you going to WCMA in Wenatchee tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be there. You can be
I'll
there?
see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Awesome.
See you tomorrow. Okay. Bye.
So we get a copy of that?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
The
That needs to be shown to the community.
video.
Yeah.
I'll send it.
Yes.
All right, well, that's our study session, so we'll take a little break and be back for our 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Meeting of the City Council for August 13th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
I just ate a piece of pizza.
Oh,
Sharon Waters.
Clint Strand.
Ann Hesberg.
Zeke Reister.
Shane Thayer?
Rona Barron.
And Travis McMaster.
Okay, everybody's here. We've got a couple of agenda amendments to make before we move the consent agenda. One is we're gonna remove item number 14. That's not ready for tonight, so that's off. And there will be an added closed meeting under RCW 4230-144B. Wages and collective bargaining. We'll do that for 20 minutes and no action to follow. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with those amendments.
I have two questions.
Sure.
Is this gonna be claims, Sharon?
Pardon me?
Is this under claims?
Yes.
Okay.
On page 3. Second one down for the Boulder Park. What is tillage fee?
Ooh, I wish Tom was here. Andy, do you know the difference between sludge and tillage?
I do not know the difference.
So sludge at the sewer treatment
Yeah.
plant gets taken to Boulder Park. Tillage has something to do with sludge.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not sure what the differentiation is, but it's biosolids from the wastewater treatment plant. So-
okay. I guess I was thinking of the
Like
thing
tilling.
behind
grass.
Safeway.
No,
Oh.
No.
no, this is from sewer.
All
treatment
right,
plant.
and then my other question. Get my hands to work. Is on page 12. And I wondered, down on, or page 13, excuse me. Wait, time out. On page 12. Additional Zoom feature, what was that?
Looking for it. Give me just a
Okay.
second.
Oh, it's on diesel.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the breakout rooms that I had to get for our executive sessions.
Okay, okay, and the other question, it's kind of tied together, it's under the Visa 2 various
Mhm.
and Golf Passes Wellness Committee, Bingo Prizes Wellness Committee. I was kind of wondering I'm not against it, just what are bingo prizes?
So we did a activity called Activity Bingo
Okay.
in June. And I gave, or the wellness committee gave prizes for a blackout,
3 rows, 2 rows, and 1 row.
Okay,
And so that's just what those were.
and so they were just like you want to
Yeah.
prize it.
Yeah, they're
So
just
you
the
did-
gift
okay.
certificate.
We played bingo and every square was, you had to do 25 burpees, you had to do 25 jumping jacks, you had to do, you had to do 10,000 steps, you had to run a 5K.
So is that a prize?
So you had to do the bingo, you could opt in to do the bingo, and if you did the
Okay.
bingo and you got bingo, then you put it, got put into a raffle for a prize.
Okay. All right, thank you, that's it.
And the golf passes is a reimbursable program
Okay,
that we pay a little bit for it, but the employees have to pay us back. But initially what we do is we buy it from the golf course
mhm.
and then the employees reimburse us as they use them.
Yeah, I think wellness committee is great. I'm not opposed to it. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Mayor, I'd like to ask about modifying the consent agenda as in item 6 about canceling council meeting 2 weeks. I'm not sure how to do this, but if in case we do need a council meeting to cover things that don't get passed here, is there, can we still schedule that meeting? Or can we pull it apart and talk about it, or I'm just actually sure the
Your own
procedure?
is to do a special meeting. Mhm.
Yeah, we can call a special meeting with 24 hours notice at any time.
Okay,
And we're canceling it because of the community block party
Right.
the week
We've
before.
always done that second one when we've had the community block.
Ah,
Because we expect all hands on deck for that.
yeah. Okay,
It takes a lot of time and organization from all staff. It's much more workload
Huh.
than putting together a council meeting,
uh-huh.
but doing both at the same time would be very, very difficult.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, moved by Shane, seconded by Ann. Any other questions? All in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. Next item, comments from the public on items not on our agenda. Is there anybody here that wants to speak on something other than what we all know you're here for? I'm not seeing, and do we have anybody online that's indicating?
No.
I'll just make a quick comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want to put a big thank you into the city of Leavenworth for partnering with URSA and Upper Valley Aquatics Boosters to try to help push forward the levy, which looks like it's going to be successful. So appreciate the city's support on that. Yeah.
Celebrate those successes, so, great. We'll move on then. Number 8 is our public hearing. It's a development agreement for Autumn Strasse, and Maggie. We'll open that public hearing now, and that is at 7:07.
Yes, thank you very much. The item before you today is a development agreement related to the project known as Leavenworth Meadows. This is a multifamily housing project located on Hempstead Highway, north of the intersection with North Road. The city council is being asked to consider approval of a development agreement between the city and Washington Leavenworth Meadows LLC. This is for improvements for a new public street known as Autumn Strasse. This new collector road is identified in the city's comprehensive plan, transportation elements, and was included in a Fair and Peers report dated October 2020. The developer has been tasked with completing their proportionate share of the new road. These improvements will include curb, gutter, sidewalk, shared use path, lighting, and public utilities. The developer is responsible for for completing all of the phase 1 project area that's noted. I believe it's in Exhibit C of the agreement. Phase 2 will be partially completed by the developer and then will be finished by the city as a capital improvement project. The agreement does not change, amend, or modify or revise any conditions or terms of approvals for any land use decisions, building permits, or construction plan approvals that have been previously issued for this development by the city. I'm going to turn it over to Andy to go through more of the details of the document this time. Thanks, maybe.
So adding on to that a little bit more, as Maggie mentioned, Exhibit C in that agreement outlines what we're calling the phase 1 area versus the phase 2 area. And I just wanted to provide a little bit more clarity around that. So the phase one area includes the full roadway profile that may be just detailed. That's the curb gutter, a shared use path on the south side of the roadway, a sidewalk on the north side of the roadway, the illumination. The roadway will have just 2 driving lanes. And then similar to some of the new corridors we're doing, it'll have a snow storage area that's separated between the roadway and the shared use path. And then as far as the utilities, there'll be a water main that ties our zone 1 to our zone 2. A gravity sewer main, stormwater main that comes down from Titus Road, and an irrigation outflow. That property previously had the irrigation outflow through the ditch, and so that'll be in the pipe system. But the phase 1 versus phase 2 area really details what's going to be completed. So phase 1 will be fully complete in the first phase by the developer. And that's the portion from Chumstick Highway west to the entrance into their development. And that entire road will be completed by the developer and drivable. The second phase of that is partially constructed by the developer, and the remainder of that is completed by the city. And so they will be doing the water main improvements all the way through that corridor in the phase 2 area. The stormwater improvements will extend all the way through there, and the irrigation outflow. They're not going to extend the gravity sewer main up into the portion. There is no area that'll be serving currently. And so that'll be on the city as part of the city's development of phase 2, if we do need or want a gravity sewer main in that portion. And then the developer will be leaving that phase 2 area with a roughly graded road. We're talking dirt road status here, but really the goal is that we have a secondary access to the greater Ski Hill Basin if there is to be an emergency like the fire we just discussed in the study session. We could get people into or out of that Ski Hill Basin via that road. So it will not be open to the public unless there is an emergency that we can move people along that corridor. That's pretty well covered.
Until we get the funding to finish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Andy for her invite. I think it was last Friday morning, and Selby came out and Rona and I went out, and it was very interesting to see, you know, all the writing and pictures and whatever, actually see it. So we really appreciated it. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do they have a,
Just a minute.
oh,
We were gonna ask,
I was gonna ask her a question.
okay. Go ahead.
So do they have does the developer have a timeline when phase 1 will be finished?
I know that their goal is to have some of the first buildings occupied next summer. But there's nothing in this agreement that ties to them to that timeline. And so really this is driven, occupancy of their structures is dependent on completing all of their improvements that are detailed in this agreement. So they won't have occupancy of their buildings until everything on this agreement is completed.
So that means like as far as the roadway itself, that's still tied to occupancy, that sort of thing. So we really don't have an idea of when they would get there. I mean, other than as the building units get built, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. But again, this would need to be completed prior to occupancy, and their goal is to have occupancy next summer. And I know that Josh is here as well, but this is a public hearing, so I don't know that we're.
Yeah. This is meant to be a public hearing where we can hear from anybody in the community that would like to make comments, and then there will be discussion time for the council later, so.
All right.
But if anybody in the public wants to address this particular subject, we need you to come up to the mic and state name and address and make your comments for the record. And so we'll see if anybody would like to do that. I'm not seeing anybody rushing and running. Kim, I see Kim online that would like to comment.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, name and address and.
Yeah, Kim Tobiason, 12380 Village View Drive, Leavenworth, Washington. My question is what's the expense to the city to participate in this?
there's no expense to the city. I'm not sure.
So we're just, I mean, I guess I was kind of confused. I was online looking at it and I guess I was kind of confused. So they're just, I guess, why is this being brought to the city? Are they requesting to use some of the land that the city owns? Or is it just they want to do the work as part of the zoning change? I guess the confusion comes in. Why does the city need to be a party to this development agreement?
Sure.
Respond, or are we just taking public comment?
Yeah, this isn't supposed to be question and answer. This is supposed to be your comments to that proposal, but I mean, this is a proposal because we're requiring it as part of this development, that we have this development agreement that they'll put this road in. So it's again, part of this. It will become our road at some point. So we need that agreement that it's developed to the standards that.
Is also partially being constructed on the city's land.
Yeah, oh, a little bit of it is, yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll just have to read because it was kind of unclear in the application that was in here. I guess my only comment would be is that, we already have, if there needs to be a participation from the city to be part of this and extend it, then, there would be concern because of our existing condition of our roads in Leavenworth. Certainly, we need to see, what we have in place, upgraded and come into compliance first. And I guess second would be contributing to traffic. We're already seeing significant backup of traffic. And so the concern certainly is seeing some infrastructure and maybe some new signals or turn lanes, but at any given day, trying to get onto the Chumstick is becoming nearly impossible. And I know as part of the original development of this complex, the county, I believe, was going to require, there's a roundabout that was going to be put in near to where I guess the entrance kind of not down from the reindeer farm, I guess it would be North Road. And so I haven't seen any further on that. If that's going to be part of the requirement for this road to go in, is to also complete that roundabout. So it's more of a complete flow of traffic that goes through there. So those are my comments.
That roundabout is a county's issue, and they have it on their to-do list, if you would, but we don't have an exact timeline.
And the developer, for the MDNS is contributing 24.4% of that roundabout project.
Okay, it just seems like they would go hand in hand. If you're going to do part of one of the phase, that why wouldn't they, I guess, kind of go in together? Because it looks like the city's expense will be to finish the road. You're only, and the development's only paying for half of the road to the Chum. So again, I think that from a totality of the whole project and what, the ultimate commitment's going to be from the city, is the roundabout going to be done? I would just like to see more of a comprehensive, complete package for everything submitted versus kind of submitting it in one-off piecemeal.
Yeah, I think there's two components to that. And the first one that I'll address is specifically the funding component today. So these projects are separated due to funding. So the portion that the city's completing will be done when we have the funding in place in order to complete it. And the same is true of the county. I know they're actively going after grants in order to construct their portion of the roundabout. And that's ultimately what both the county roundabout portion and the rest of the build out of the phase 2 area is all dependent on funding. And then the second component, Megan was pointing to this, but the second component of that is we can't require the developer to build the entirety of the road, and Maggie kind of stated that in her introduction there.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the connector road between Chumstick and Titus has been identified in plans that were in our comprehensive plan before this zone even came in. It's been part of the city's long-term plan to put a road in there. So they are building their proportionate share. They're building the entirety of that half of the road versus like half street improvements like you typically see with development. So that was part of the MDNS that was issued, and that's included in the packet as well, but they're contributing to that. And then they, again, are also paying their share of the roundabout construction costs to the town.
Right. Yeah, I guess that was kind of my point, is the roundabout. I mean, it seems like, again, it's kind of coming in piecemeal. And I think that we can require them to do certain things because they do need a development agreement from the city. And I believe they do need an easement or a donation of some of the city land that they own on that corner. So I think we certainly can hold the developer somewhat accountable to what we require to approve this. Otherwise, we could just say we're not going to approve it. I think there's kind of some give and take in there. So again, I would just like to see a more comprehensive plan in its totality and a study done showing what the ultimate impact is going to be. Because again, we're facing some pretty significant challenges with traffic right now, especially on the Chum and coming down by where the high school and the schools are, and then trying to merge, onto Highway 2. And then, all the other traffic problems we're seeing is just I think we need to have more of a comprehensive plan instead of just saying, okay, we're going to do this and we'll figure the rest out later. So thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:19. And we will go on to action item number 9, which is the development agreement for Autumn Strasse. You've heard what's been presented thus far, and now's the time that you can ask further questions. And I would entertain a motion to put this on the floor.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the development agreement with WA Leavenworth Meadows LLC for the construction of Autumn Strasse roadway and associated utilities.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Shane. Any other questions? There, Andy? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I met you on Friday. I don't remember your name, sorry.
I'm Josh.
Josh, sorry. Can you explain what's happening? That meadow had a lot of water in it, so I was involved in reading the original plans and how you had to, do a lot of, and I ride my bike there a lot, how you had to fill in a lot of gravel and et cetera. So now I'm thinking about the flow off the road, and it sounds like you have gutters, and so I'm wondering if that goes into some kind of collection pond or it goes right out to the river. How are you dealing with that when you build that road?
The stormwater that is generated from the roadway is going to a detention pond. That's part of the design. So there also is a bunch of there's pass-through stormwater from the Titus Road that would essentially be transferred through the road project and on into the Chopstick Creek. So but for the stormwater generated from the road, it's retained in that pond. And that's been thoroughly reviewed by the city and Gray Osborne and their stormwater consultants.
So when we were out there, that's a kind of a scooped out area at the bottom of the development. Is that the detention pond?
No, you wouldn't have seen where the detention pond for the road is going.
Oh.
What you probably saw was the construction crew working on part of the system for the Meadows project.
Oh.
Yeah, so we haven't yet started construction on the road. Utilities.
Where will the pond be? Will it be at the bottom?
Yeah, it'll be to the south of the lift station. So, yeah, close to where you were standing for that.
Josh, I had a question for you as far as, like I brought it up with Andy. The road completion kind of is tied in with the construction of the units. Do you guys have a rough idea of when your, that road is gonna be completed or close to being completed? Any ballpark figure?
It should be completed by early summer of next year. So, and like what Andy mentioned, the permit, there's a condition of approval on the permits that tie occupancy to completion of the phase 1 roadway. So the development has every incentive to finish the road on schedule. So, yeah.
And with that road completion, that would also bring the unfinished road that goes to Titus. That would at least be in a passable, usable, passive, yeah, for emergencies. that right?
That's correct. A graded pathway is what the city requested.
Okay,
And the other thing I would point out too is that the entire roadway that is being proposed was entirely directed by the city. This was the city's request. The development did not want to build the road necessarily. We were originally planning on coming directly off of the Chumstick Highway. So this whole road effort and considerable expenses involved is per the city's request. And I think it'll be a benefit to the community, and we're happy to participate. We're not only completing the construction of the first portion of the road, but the owner is also going to be dedicating the remainder of the right of way to the city so the city can construct it. And all, like Andy said, or like what the mayor said, all of this is coming with what is being proposed right now with no cost to the city. This is cost by the developer that we're participating with what the city requested in front of the project.
okay. Thanks.
Yeah, sir.
Any other questions? All right, and we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the development agreement for Autumn Strasse, let me see your hands. And it's unanimous. All right. Moving on, we have a purchasing and procurement policy, and you've kind of seen this in rough form before. And Andy, you want to explain it again?
Yeah, absolutely. This is resolution 13/2024 purchasing and procurement policy. This supersedes the current purchasing and procurement policy that we have. Really, this is revising quite a few details in the policy and outlining a much more clear policy for staff to use, both in purchasing and in general procurement. I do want to point out, so this is quite an overhaul from the previous policy we had. With that in mind, we will be amending it again later this year. I had a conversation with the auditor, I think it was last week, after we sent this out, and there are some requirements. They want specific language listed in here for federally funded projects it's just details that have never explicitly been included in our policy. We normally just reference when the grant funding, we just follow their procurement policy, but they want it explicitly listed in ours. So this will be amended again here this year, just so you know. But we wanted to move ahead with this time to update all of this information and just have a better operating policy for our staff.
Questions?
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve resolution 13/2024 purchasing and procurement policy.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Clint. Any other questions? All those in favor, let me see your hands. And it passes unanimously. Okay, Selby, a social media policy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. You guys saw this at our last meeting. Communications Special Projects Manager Kara Raftery-Zupke presented this social media policy. I believe Councilmember Thayer had a question or two, which Kara addressed at that point in time. This was drafted by the Communications Council, Inc., and this is based on a review of relevant federal case law as of April 2024. It's been reviewed by the city's attorney, and this is what is before you for action tonight as resolution 14-2024.
Questions?
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve resolution 14-2024 social media policy.
Second.
Moved by Shane, seconded by Ann. No other questions? All those in favor, let me see your hand. It passes unanimously. All right. Ordinance 1695, common interest ownership condominiums in residential zones. Andy.
Oh, that's actually not you.
That's, there you go. Why did it say?
She does not want to. Sorry, that was my fault.
Andy, you're just so good at handling all these. Maggie.
The city is being asked to accept the planning commission recommendation tonight to adopt residential condominiums. This code amendment, also known as common interest ownership, would permit dwellings within the RL6 and R8 zoning districts to convert to condominiums
using the city's binding site plan process. This item was discussed with the planning commission in April and May, and a hearing was held in June with a recommendation for council to adopt the code as drafted. On June 11th, the council reviewed this draft code and during a study session and established a public hearing at their June 25th meeting. And then on July 9th, the council hosted that public hearing, at which time 4 members of the public spoke in favor of the proposed amendments. At the close of that hearing, the council discussed the proposed amendments and requested some additional time to host a public workshop. And that workshop was held on July 24th at the Fest Hall. We had 30 to 35 people present, including staff, presenters, and council members, and then the public. The discussion varied from housing stock options to residential building design concerns, such as height and overall appearance and fitting with the neighborhood. We also discussed the potential loss of rental units. The realtor and appraisers there, they did clarify that the proposed condo code would provide a housing option for people moving toward home ownership. We also discussed the passage of House Bill 1337, which will require the city to allow the sale of ADUs independently from the principal unit. And that's with our upcoming comprehensive plan, we need to address that. At that workshop, it was suggested the city wait to adopt this proposed code and then spend some time considering how to make development more compatible and consistent with the neighborhood character. And then just wait for the comprehensive plan update to address this. And while the law requires that we adopt this with the upcoming comprehensive plan, we chose to move forward with this action because of a few things. One, it's been on the docket since 2022 with the planning commission, and it was moved up in priority each year, and this year it's number 2 on the docket. So the planning commission worked really hard and knew this was a priority to get more home ownership availability in the city. Number 2, we received an application by a resident, and following due process, we moved this application forward. And 3, this would provide an immediate benefit, including men's ability to continue planning for a new low-income ownership housing. Condos are just one tool that the city has in its toolbox to increasing housing to serve all economic levels and stages. This is consistent with comprehensive plan goal H1. Because they are smaller and generally more affordable than most typical single-family homes, sales of ADUs as separate units can increase home ownership opportunities for first-time home buyers. And for low-income households when used with MEND and their proposal. Allowing this additional form of ownership would increase the city's housing stock at a price point that could allow first-time buyers to get in. Plus, the units already exist, so this could be done in a matter of months through the binding site plan process. Staff did review of relocation programs and found very few cities manage that type of program, which is cumbersome and staff intensive. Staff did include in your binder an alternative proposal to address some concerns about displacement of renters in some of the older dwellings. If you look at that option, it proposes limiting the conversion of dwellings to those that were constructed after the ADU regulations, which were adopted in March of 2016. So if you chose to go with that option, this code would apply to dwellings that were constructed after that date, after 2016. So older units wouldn't be able to use this. It could be problematic. It could encourage demolition of older dwellings, but that is an option out there for you to consider tonight. That concludes my presentation. I'm available.
Questions?
Yeah, Maggie, I guess I have a question. This is from a letter from Caitlin, who is in favor of passing this. She also mentioned that if we had concerns that we wanted to modify, another option would be that is it possible we could modify this ordinance to where people who could qualify to purchase these condominiums would have to qualify as means of meeting 120% of the AMI. Can we do that?
I guess who would be monitoring that? Do we have?
So here's my concern, okay? It's probably been brought up before. Yes, it does provide a diversified housing. But it also, and it does, I wouldn't call condos that we build here absolutely, even beside, other than men, to be low income. I would say it's more affordable, but it certainly is not low income.
Right.
So there's still the challenge of, and we don't have any control over that, for folks who see this as a fine opportunity for second homes, that, you know, we can't, there's no way we can stop that. So that's always been a concern for mine, was these get snapped up by, yeah, not all of them. I'm sure some folks that will be in that market that can afford to step up, like the missing middle. But also, you know, is there, when she mentioned that in her letter, she said, however, the city council is not comfortable allowing condominiums outright in residential zones. Upper Valley Men would request that as a plan B, the city council would adopt ordinance 1695 with the restriction that condominiums are allowed if individual units are sold to households earning up to 120% of the AMI.
I guess we would have to have a program in place to.
Wouldn't that be a deed restriction?
Yeah.
It would be, and that would be, again, the ones who we have in this community that would enforce that and do that is men. I mean, what she's talking about is allowing them to be able to do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But again, all I would say is if we create some, and you're right, nothing we do is going to stop people from wanting to be here that can afford to buy up what we have. So that's not going to change. You know, we don't have control of that. So how is it different than what we're currently experiencing? I mean, I just think, you know, the fact that you are going to create units that aren't as high priced as the single family homes is going to open up an opportunity. Now, they won't all go to locals probably any more than the single families are all have to go to locals. You know, I mean, it's just, that's the reality of what we're in a community that's a desirable place to be.
I want to follow up with what Zeke said, because I thought that was an interesting idea too. So far, the council hasn't been able to mandate affordability on a single density initiative. And, you know, I think Carl is admitting that and saying that, and it would be nice to sort of stop that train and try to do something different for once. So, I don't know enough about what a deed restriction is. I don't know if the city can put that in place and then it just has to be like that, or if we have to have a department to manage it. Or I think she was saying that, I almost thought she was saying that you don't get to sell as a condo or even, or consider it unless you agree to that particular thing. So could you talk more about that? I mean, what is a deed restriction? Is it possible?
I mean,
Could we do it?
I'm not super well versed in this, so somebody may chime in, but a deed restriction, it basically goes on the title and it restricts that property. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to talk over you. You're doing great. Keep going.
But I guess my concern is having a department that monitor, like, how do I ensure that it sells?
So I guess my thought on that is, I'm not a realtor, but I grew up in a realtor family. So if it's a deed restriction and it's filed with the title company, isn't, for all intents and purposes, the title company the cop on this? Because it's on the title. Like if you were selling a home and your buyer, wouldn't that be on the researcher for the title company as the offer is accepted and it goes to the title company and they're researching? There has to be some sort of income verification to ensure that they're making 120% or less of the AMI. Like what? I don't know if you'd have to do anything. Wouldn't the buck stop with the title company saying, yep, that's fine, or nope? you're making more than,
But who's gonna police the title company?
So I can speak to how this is common in Massachusetts, up to the 80% AMI. So the last municipality that I worked with, we hired an outside agency using some of our affordable housing funds, which came from property tax, to monitor the program. So we had dozens and dozens and dozens of rentals and some ownerships enrolled in this program. And if you're a renter, then you have to income verify annually. And if you're an owner, it's your own income verified at the time of purchase. But we did pay an agency to manage that process for us.
So we could contract with somebody to do the work. Like what they did back where you are.
Although there, it's much more prevalent. Every town has these projects because of the state mandate.
Right.
Here, it might be a little harder to find someone to do.
Well, that's why I brought up the whole thing about, if we can't get through this tonight, we would use another meeting, 2 weeks to get there. Because I think that I think there's a place for condos. I know that's not a real, and with some folks, condos in a single family residential section isn't real popular. I think that's good. I think there is a place for them. I'm struggling with the fact that I don't think we need to expedite this because of a request of one person, of one developer. I don't think that's why we should just do something, right? I think we should get this right. And so my feeling is that if we're really after affordable housing, or at least as close as we can get, that at least explore the possibility of contracting this task out to another agency that has that expertise and can help us with keeping the prices at 120% AMI. But I'm resisting the need to just, and all due respect to the planning commission, I know they work their butts off. I sat in on the other two that I was there when they talked about this, and I know they put the time in, so this isn't a rejection of all that hard work. But I'm sitting here with a tough decision to make. I feel it isn't a slam dunk, and I was elected to this position, and I feel like I want to do the best job I can do and have the best information available. So that is why I am asking the questions. So
let's open it up. There's some people that might want to comment, so.
I just want to make a comment as it relates to, you mentioned Caitlin from MEN. I'm actually on the board of MEN, and I have some familiarity with the situation of the management of restrictions. She obviously has way more knowledge on this than I do, and it's unfortunate she can't be here to address it directly. But early on, before MEN was given that fantastic opportunity from Marston's, they were managing deed restrictions as it relates to housing. It was proving very expensive and very inefficient. And we started looking into using an external organization to manage it. Also very difficult to find unless you have large volumes of homes that you're managing it around. So it sounds good to just get another organization to manage it, but it turned out on paper that was not something that was viable. It was only until we got 31 units through the Marston's relationship that we had enough critical mass to actually hire our own people to be those managers. So that's what's happening today. We have an individual that's a housing manager and has all the skills and the knowledge and the time and the dedication to manage this. And that really is the only feasible model, right? So I caution thinking that it's simple to just get another administrative body to manage restrictions in that way. It's a very difficult thing to get put in place. You gotta have the volume, You gotta have it is an expense. It will be more expensive too, depending on how restrictive some of those restrictions are, how much policing is required, how much inspection, how frequent inspections, the legal fees associated with backing those up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it really kind of looms fast. So just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah. Thanks, Kurt.
My name is Judy Durpack, and I'm on the Cascade School District School Board. And I encourage you to pass this. I understand your concerns, but as Maggie said, one more tool in the toolbox. Our teachers and our young families need more availability to live here if we are tired of them, not just teachers, but staff.
Yes.
Allison Miller, 337 Prospect, and I'm planning commission member. Video. I think it's important to recognize that affordable housing and housing options are not, they don't have to be completely linked all the time. That's not really possible. So affordable housing is super, super important, but that entails funding and programs that don't necessarily exist. Like right now we have MENT and the Wenatchee, the Housing Authority. Yeah, we have the Housing Authority and we have MENT. And they are the only entities that are capable of managing and providing housing that is income qualified in some way. And there are ways that those efforts can be expanded, but like allowing condos is not really connected to that. And I think trying to connect every single like housing option initiative that the Planning Commission presents to expanding our affordable housing options is not really going to work very well. And I think there's repeatedly been times when the council says like, well, will this increase affordable housing? And the planning commission can't say, yes, it will. You know, we can say, yes, it's another option that could help with affordable housing. It's an option that could be used by those programs that have funding and management. But to tie any of these things, you know, cottage housing, condos, to tie any of these exclusively to affordable housing is limiting our options more than expanding our options. So if we say, you know, if you decide, yes, we can have condos, not every condo is going to be affordable, but not every house in Leavenworth is affordable. Not every duplex in Leavenworth is affordable. Not every single family home, not every ADU is affordable in Leavenworth, because not every single thing can participate in those very limited programs that we have, MEND and the Housing Authority. But it's still a useful option. You know, it's the same as like 2 duplexes. Or a duplex is less expensive to own or to rent than one single family home. You know, and it doesn't have to be, you know, it's still part of the open housing market unless, you know, there's a program involved in it like MEND. But like it's still just like another missing middle option that we're putting out there. So I would just be really cautious about limiting our options, such as condos, that could help with kind of the missing middle. Because you want to expand affordability. They're kind of 2 different things.
Right. You're saying you hold everything accountable to that one threshold of affordability. You're gonna lose.
You're limiting options overall. Yeah.
There are people that wouldn't qualify for those that still need a house here, or a home, or an option to buy, and.
We were just looking at like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, on Zillow, there are condos in the multifamily zone that are going for
under $400,000.
Actual condos, not like an ADU converted into a condo.
Well, I can speak to that.
Like a condo in the multifamily zone, like a triplex
Yeah.
or something like that, but because right now you can have condos in the multifamily zone.
Right.
And those are just market rate, they're just, anybody can buy it, you don't have to income qualify, it's just on the open market. And like, I have friends who are teachers that are like, yeah, I finally was able to buy a home, I got a condo on
Yeah.
West Whitman, And so it's not like, I don't know, I just, it's like, there is value,
Right.
even if
You don't
it
get
is
your,
available as a market rate option and it's not tied to affordability.
yeah,
Because expanding our affordable housing programs is a whole nother thing that does require attention as well. But it's not linked.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be linked.
If I can piggyback real quick. This condo proposal.
And who are you?
Name and address, please.
Stephen Brewer, 161 West Elm Street.
Social security number?
Thank you, council too. Just to piggyback on that, this proposal also does not prevent MET or any other low-income housing provider from using this tool to provide. So it's both, right? Right. As opposed to carving it out exclusively only for
Affordable housing.
affordable, right? It's both and. And Allison kind of stole my thunder.
Because I was looking over.
The house prices, so I just want to very quickly read a couple prices out loud. Some single family homes sold in the last 6 months or so. 735,000, 1 million, 845,000, 721,000, 685,000, 776,000, 1.2 million, 633,000. I could.
yeah,
Now, condos sold in the last year or two. 359,000, 325,000, 349,000, 435,000, 400,000, 292,000, 426,000. That's all market rate. Many of them are half the price of a single family home. I think if you want to summarize it all, that's it right there. That's all.
Simon Fairbar, 103 Commercial Street. I just think that what these two are saying is absolutely correct. What you have here is a housing market where people want to be here. And because it's sought after, that drives prices. However, the hard data on the numbers that they're kind of giving you the roundabout is in the last 12 months inside the city limits, the average single family home sells for $688,000. The average condominium unit in the same exact time frame sold for $433,000. That $250,000 difference is exactly what 1695 is doing. It is creating the ability of home ownership for I would urge the council to divorce the idea of affordability from 1695 completely, because they are not, they don't have much to do with each other at all. I understand the councils want to create affordability, and because they have this housing, because you have this condo thing sitting in front of you, you're thinking, how can we mesh the two? And I don't think the two mesh at all. I think 1695 stands on its own. What the planning commission has put forth is does exactly the job that 1695 was supposed to do. It creates housing units that are purchasable at less of a price than single family housing units. And a lot of these are going to be infill housing, meaning they're houses that already exist, ADUs that already exist. And so it's not going to put an extra burden on the water system or the sewer system. It is something that exists that could allow teachers and young professionals and the ability of home ownership. And home ownership is where you gain equity. You start at that lower and you work your way up. And that's this, what has been put forth from the planning commission seems to hit a home run for the idea of which it was supposed. Now, I'm not saying that there's going to be pushback from the city, from the constituency on how this housing will look and what it will do. But the idea of a deed restriction, I mean, I'm looking at your mission statement up here, and that is not an inclusive decision. A deed restriction like that is not an inclusive decision. You have to understand that being sought after like Leavenworth is, especially in the real estate market, is a very special thing. There are plenty of places in our state and in our nation that are struggling to have people move there and want to move there. And we have that in spades here. And while, yes, Zeke talked about the idea that people from outsiders or people from outside Leavenworth might pick these up as secondary homes, that is very true. But the open market is the open marketplace. And we can't, I don't believe the city council can, and I don't believe the constituents can dictate who wants to be here and who has the means to buy here. But the tool in the toolbox that has been talked about, this is absolutely it. And I would urge the city council to understand that affordability and 1695 are not linked at all. And you have to look at 1695 on its own, and it absolutely does the job. $250,000, that difference that I told you. And there are a lot of ADUs that are smaller than the average condominium size. So you're even talking less than $433,000 for a lot of these. And so this is, I mean, the proposal put forth by the city council is absolute, stands on its own. From the real estate standpoint, I have looked at it, I have run the numbers on it, and I can promise you that it stands on its own and it does exactly the job that it was put forth to do. So I would urge the city council to approve it. And the fact is, with HB 1337, this is forced on you by 2026 anyway. It makes sense for you guys. Binding site plan, fantastic. You guys are already going to be in control of what's happening. And you know, there was a lot of pushback with this Stafford Street project. And I would posit the Stafford Street project met all zoning codes, met all compliance, and the developer did all of the necessary items. And so the unhappiness with the people that might be neighbors with the height of it or whatever, that unhappiness shouldn't be, you know, geared towards 1695. I really feel that is a, you know, that is a planning thing on the side that, you know, can be changed. But 1695, I do honestly believe is a home run, and you guys should. I mean, there's no, I don't feel that there's even a need to wait. Vote it in, get it now, and get control of it, and that would be the best. That would be the best step forward for the city. Thank you.
Other comments?
Celeste Peterson, I live at 12700 Spring Street. I was gonna say a lot of things that this gentleman said. I mean, I am a former statistician for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and one of the things that we put together was the cost of living information, the cost of living index. And I was gonna say that this is exactly what we need as a numbers person. And you just said it so eloquently and so emphatically, not only, you know, say huzzah. Fantastic. And I think that we're confusing an ownership model with something else entirely, and we shouldn't be doing that. We need to have ownership. My son and his wife got their toe in the door in Seattle with a condo. And that condo is about the same, or it's a little higher than here, but it was still like their first toe in the door, and they were ecstatic about it. And it was what allowed them to spend 5 years happily in the city and finish what they had started out to do. And I know people on my street, and I know young people and I know older people who are dying to have more condo options here, and we can provide it. We absolutely can provide it.
Kim has her hand up on Zoom.
We've got a couple. We've got Tobias and Crosby. Kim?
Kim?
Well, you should be good to go, Kim. Can you mute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I keep hearing about the toolbox. I think the toolbox is full. We have passed so much in Leavenworth so quickly that I don't think that I've seen a comprehensive study or anything done that shows, are those tools working? Before we continue to pile on the toolbox, I think we need to take a step back and look at what we've done. I mean, it's been significant change for a very small community. And I think this community has come out time and time again with concerns for fire, for traffic, for overpopulation. And by doing something like this, we're creating more of that and without a solution to how we're dealing with it now. How are we dealing with the traffic? How are we dealing? What are we number one in the state for potential fire danger? We're seeing fires starting all around us. We saw one earlier this year, just above, Ski Hill. Thank God they got it out. But we have a real problem, and we don't have full build out yet of the developments that have already been slated in their construction and what that's going to add. Yes, in 2 years, the state's going to mandate. I think we use that 2 years to take a step back. And how are we going to handle that for our community? How are we going to handle the infrastructure for what we're seeing potentially coming? I mean, we need to really look and study. And yes, we're going to have a lot of second homeowners or third homeowners that are going to look at this opportunity and say, I don't want a full house to have to take care of anymore. I would rather slide into a condo. You look at Alpine Village, those condos go within a matter of weeks because they're desirable, because they're condos and they can rent them and they're affordable for a second home, and they don't have the maintenance of a second home. A primary home. So again, there's no guarantee that this is going to create any form of affordability, or is it going to create first home ownership participation and buying? We don't know that. We think it might, but again, it's kind of like throwing a noodle at the wall and seeing if it's going to stick or not. And I think we have so much at risk for this community if we continue to build without understanding what we've already done. I think there's great concern. And my other concern is we're talking about eliminating current housing stock for people that can afford current houses they're living in and getting rid of those and kicking them out so we can put in other homes that we think might be affordable versus are affordable. Or you're going to see homes that are going to start selling because instead of having one single family home, they're going to tear down a home that's occupied and they're going to put up 3 or 4 homes. And it is going to create more strain on our infrastructure because all of a sudden you have one primary home and a family. Now all of a sudden you're going to have multiple ownerships within a multiple single lot, and they're all going to have 2 or 3 cars. You're maximizing it. Where's the snow going to go? I mean, there's just so many problems I think that we haven't really digested in what we've already approved, that I'm just, as a community member, and I know you guys are probably tired of me saying it, I think we need to take a pause and look at what we've already done, how it's working, what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen if this bill goes through or it's gone through, and what does that mean for our small community, and plan for that. And then in a couple years, revisit this and say, okay, we've got a plan in place. We understand our build out now. Now we understand our traffic patterns and flows and so forth. But to make a decision now without fully understanding the ramifications of what we've already done, I think it's just extremely dangerous. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kim. Ann?
What's up? And you should be good to go. Unmute yourself.
I want to really, Ann Crosby, 306 Cascade Street. I want to really second and support what was just said. Basically, it's this 1695 is a very big tool that's too broad in the moment. I mean, MEND can do what it does, but we don't need to change the way we're doing the entire structure, whatever tools we have in place or want to put in place, just because they made that request. And by declaring that condos can go within the residential area, that encourages builders to build as densely as possible because they want to maximize their profit. And when it's a condo, they don't have to rent it out or wait around. They can sell it right away and get get the profit that they need. So it monetizes every single housing unit, by attaching a big selling price to every housing unit in our community, in our city. So we're encouraging developers to see what we have as a profit as opposed to as a town. And I don't think any of us want to, it's our responsibility to take care of our town and make it what we want. And developers do what they do, but we don't want to encourage them to, they're after market rate units, and they're going to put big prices on market rate units. So this is not going to help that at all. If anything, I think it's going to increase the smaller units that would be rentable will go for a great big selling price. I don't think that's going to solve our problems at all. So And what you said in terms of evacuation and fire, that's really, really important right now. I mean, we can't evacuate right now, and we're adding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. And we're encouraging developers to build big profit market rate units. Yes, they can be called condos, but they're not going to be affordable. And it really is affecting our infrastructure and in particular our ability to evacuate when fire does happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I maybe clarify something?
Pardon? Any other comments? Yeah.
My name's Noelle Knudsen and I live at 12805 Spring Street. And I actually studied affordable housing in grad school. And I also have a 21-year-old daughter who lives in Leavenworth and is approaching the time when she uses high housing, and it's extremely difficult. And while I understand like the desire to have a rate or put a deed on a condominium, in reality, I think it's just going to be costly. There are people to monitor that, and it's just going to cause less units that could be, I don't want to use the word affordable because then it goes in a bucket of defining affordable, but a condo by nature will be less money than a house. A cottage house by nature will be less than a home. So building, like condominiums are one thing in a toolbox, and the longer we wait to put options out there for people that would be naturally affordable or naturally less than market rate, the more it will just drive up costs. If you wait years to do something, the cost of building is more, and then the cost for that person will be more. And the cost, if we have less out there, the cost of just homes will be more because there's less available. So I can understand all parts of these things, but we really need to put more housing that is less expensive than what we currently have out there. And unfortunately, like there aren't a whole lot of ways to do that unless you become increased density. I mean, it's just, you just can't get around it. And we have people, my daughter's going to be a teacher in 6 months here. And, I look at what she'll be making, and I don't know how people do it. It is so costly. So I understand the concerns, and I understand that it won't be perfect. And I'm sure that, some units will be sold to people, that don't live here, or it's a second home, or, I mean, I'm sure that there will be scenarios like that, but there will also be scenarios where people that need housing will be able to afford it. And I just think stopping progress is just going to make the problem worse.
Yeah. Other comments? Yes.
Approval at 976 Mountain Home Road. So I will just kind of speak at least to my own personal process while we took this up on the planning commission. We did deliberate this over 3 months' time. We added an additional meeting for the community to discuss this because obviously there's a lot of I don't want to say confusion, but there's a lot of detail or nuance in this. And obviously bringing the word condos into it, I think puts a connotation in a lot of people's minds that isn't really applicable to what this is designed to do. In fact, attaching the special code request also had a lot of noise to this conversation that when we were deliberating this, we really didn't put that into part of the thought process. Really, at least speaking for myself, the thought process really was, how can we address the missing middle? And not the affordability piece, but this is really not a tool that many of us thought would be applicable to that without subsidies don't work. So we really wanted to go after the missing there. Hear from all over here tonight. It's the first time home buyers. There's an entire generation of people that have been locked out of the housing market. And so trying to find creative ways in which we can find that middle tier and make that a little bit more affordable, not to the definition of affordability, but affordable to that segment of people, young professionals that are way above the 120% of the AMI, but still can't afford to purchase a home in our community. So we're really looking for that opportunity. So when we saw this, at least for myself, I see it, look at a duplex, I see one owner that owns that today. They, really only people that they can do is rent the other side out. With this tool, you can now split that unit up, and now you have two owners, right? And two owners, splitting that cost in half, in theory, is gonna be a lot more affordable than that one unit bundled together. So that's really kind of what we wanted to approach with this. So a lot of time talking through this, a lot of time, even going down the path of the deed restriction, what could we do? And really the lawyers didn't like any of the language we were kind of discussing, because you kind of start approaching on discrimination when you start saying who can and cannot partake in this type of ownership. I do want to address just a couple other points that have come up. This does not pertain to development. It does not pertain to density, as it really is about existing units. So I know a lot of people are concerned about, well, developers will do this and then it's going to create all kinds of density issues. It doesn't, because it's really just about the existing inventory that we have today. So I have to say, thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Drew, I was gonna ask you, how is it that this ordinance pretty much addresses just existing units and not what people could like tear down something and put two in or something like that?
Well, we did add the additional piece that was not required by the state, that everything has to go through the binding site plan. So we added another layer of really, allowing the city to decide what can and can't be done in these projects. So you have to have an existing development to move into.
To apply for this. Okay.
Well, we did talk about how the binding site plan could be done, like, once a building permit is issued. It is possible that this can be applied to new development.
Right.
However, it does not affect density at all.
Right, because they're already.
There's no impact to density, because whether either it can be applied to existing development, or if someone says, well, I want to build a duplex, and then once it's built, I want to condominiumize. Anything that becomes a condo has to first meet the underlying zoning code. So we already have our single family zoning code that says you can have a house you can have just as one residence, you can have a house plus an ADU, or you can have a duplex. Those are your options currently for what can exist on a property, and condos do not change that in any way. There's no effect. It's still like, you have to meet those underlying requirements for the zone in terms of how many dwelling units you can have, setbacks, height, all the other restrictions.
In order to build in.
Lot coverage, everything.
Yeah, in order to build in a single family residential, right?
Yeah, so you have to meet all those requirements before you can condominiumize something.
Okay.
It has to meet the underlying. So.
Thanks, Allison.
I find this so tough because I really appreciate how you're saying you studied affordable housing, and I've lived here for 40 years. I can't believe it. It wasn't my intention originally, but I've been here a long time now. And so I've watched the community change and grow. And I think it's so important that we have a sense of community, like Carla is always bringing up. At the same time, I'm super upset myself because, and I feel a little heartbroken because I have so many people that say to me that their voice doesn't matter. I have so many people who say to me that they've tried and tried to communicate with this body and they've given up or they're hurt. I mean, I was just at someone's house with Maggie and she was in tears about how she'd been treated by the city and how she hadn't been paid attention to. And she was right to be, because we didn't pay attention. So I mean, like, you saw the letters that came in, the council saw them. I counted them up. There were 9 letters against and 4 in favor or something like that. And if you include the workshop we just had where no one from the public spoke in favor of this for various reasons. It wasn't just a reason like, I don't want those people for neighbors. I mean, that's another thing that is so disturbing to me. It's people that, worked on a city council in another town, or they worked for the city of Seattle. They're retired attorneys for buildings. They're people who also have great ideas about how to build a community. And so it's, because they talk to me, maybe more than other people on the council. Some of you say that you're not aware of it that much, but there are so many people who just, have given up. I mean, I'm going to give you another example. I went to a physical therapist because I've had a lot of medical stuff going on lately. He's very popular from Wenatchee, and I said, I'm on the city council. And he said, oh yeah, I know, this is completely unsolicited. He said, I know a lot of people want to move because they don't like what's happening in Leavenworth. I can't tell you how often I randomly hear that. So what I'm hearing is the following, and I want to try to represent those people. What I'm hearing is we're not against condominiums. We're against them at this point because we look at Stafford Street, which could still be built. It's 2 feet lower.
No,
It's 2 feet lower. Yeah, it's at 0 lot line. Yeah, it can't be.
That's a multifamily zone though. We're talking about.
No, Stafford can still be built.
The same height.
Not, it's not 2.5 feet less, but it can still be a multiplex like that. Anyway, they look at stuff like that. They go too high, not enough vegetation. Let's talk more about the parking. Why is there so much pavement, et cetera, et cetera. And those aren't bad things for people to be wondering about in their neighborhood. There's nothing wrong with those people for caring about those things. And so my feeling is, and the other thing that I take a little bit of objection to is I'm trying to pick up on what Zeke is saying about, your point is, well, we have to separate what we do in the planning commission from affordability, but we have done that. I think maybe we're looking to not do that for once. I mean, that is the tact we've taken.
I'm not saying
We haven't
separate.
attached, just a sec. We haven't attached that. And I was talking to, for instance, Jim Mayhew, I talked to him, he came over to our house, a bunch of people met with him. And he's running for, being a representative of our region, and he's a mayor pro tem. He said, we always made sure that in our city, we required people to build affordably. I don't know how they did it. He said, that's how you do that. So for Zeke to bring that up and say, why don't we mandate it for once? I don't think that's a crazy idea. I mean, I just heard from someone else about it. So, I guess I'm in favor of waiting and hearing from the community and balancing some of these things out. I'm not against condominiums, but I think that there aren't enough things in place to protect and care and listen to the people that have not been happy about it and who remain unhappy. And I hate coming in here and having to be their voice. I hate how that feels.
Well, everybody's a voice for a group of people, and you're a voice for a group, and everybody here is a voice for a different group. And, it's not that those people aren't being heard.
They're telling me they are.
No, it's just that they haven't always gotten their way, but they've been heard. But you're equating, when you've got people that are on one side and another side, there's going to always be somebody that's not going to be happy with the decision.
I think this is another time where I don't agree with you.
Okay.
I think it's about I think it's about moderation. So they're not talking about one side or another in an extreme way. They're talking about having a little more balance. And they're people who have good ideas and a lot of experience. So I don't know if we all represent someone in here. I don't like to think of it that way, but I'm just saying that I hear that from the community, and that saddens me because I've lived here a long time, and it saddens me.
We've got some hands up, Travis.
Yes.
So Kurt Peterson, 12700 Spring Street. I'm gonna actually make, before it was just a statement of data, I'm gonna make my own comments now, so I feel justified to speak again. Rory, you might want to go speak to more people, because I hear from a lot of people the opposite story, where they're not having the opportunities presented to them. And to be honest with you, the people who write letters, I'm one of these people, okay? I have time. I have copious amounts of time. The people that attend meetings, the people that get that speak, like myself, I have copious amounts of time. Those are not the people we're trying to help. The people that we're trying to help have jobs, sometimes multiple. They have kids, they have activities they're taking care of. Or frankly, they just are working during hours that aren't compatible with what the city council is doing. So I think you might consider broadening who you're talking to. Because I think it's a very dangerous precedent to start to make decisions based on the number of letters and the number of people in the room. And I'm here to be one of those people in the room, right? But that's not how I think you should really be making decisions. It has to be made on the facts and what the design of this ordinance is about.
Well,
Continuing to inflate it with other storylines about fire and other things. I mean, those are important issues, and those definitely pull it. They're important things to think about. That's not what this ordinance is about. So we need to pull it back to the reality of what we're talking about here, and not keep talking about other things. I don't know if you're doing it consciously, but it's a tactic to create delay. So
Well-
I don't think that that's a fair approach. Stay grounded in what the ordinance is about. That's the way you should address it as a councilor.
thank you for that advice that you've given me after living here for 40 years and just explaining. I went to a physical therapist who spouted that to me. It wasn't somebody I knew.
Why is that?
Okay, order, please.
I mean, I'm sorry that I spoke for a lot of people, including my own
We have a
opinion.
big crowd.
Talking to other people too.
Excuse
All those people matter just.
And they
Excuse me, excuse me. All I was gonna say is that I spoke for those people, and the reaction I got from you is like, get it together and listen to other people. I've lived here for 40 years, so I have a fairly good sense of the community, and I've worked mostly in nonprofit. So
I'm
yes, we
surprised you
can,
haven't heard from these other people I'm hearing
yes,
from.
we can talk about it in the future. But I did need to speak on behalf of a number of people I hear from.
So Travis, you wanted to say something?
I thought I had a question, but I do not. Sorry.
I want to say something.
Okay. Yes.
Everybody comes from a different place. I've been here 54 years and I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people call me, a lot of people see me out in the yard and stop. A lot of people see me at the pool. Right now, the people that I'm talking to, and there's a whole load of them, do not want this to move forward tonight. It's not that they don't want it to happen, it's that they feel that it needs more time with the public and with the people that need to be heard, because they're not being heard. And I don't appreciate any kind of an attack on Rona. I think that's unfair. You have your people or you have your visions, and we are also residents, although city council people, and we talk to many people. And so those people are not feeling heard. I can't tell you how many people tell me that they're not being feeling that they're being heard, so they just don't say anything anymore. I think part of it is that you're inviting something into the single family zone that's new, and not everybody is excited about that. I was unable to attend the additional meeting due to family issues, and the feedback I got from that was the vast majority of the people there did not want this to move forward at this time. Not that they didn't want it to move forward, but not at this time, that they feel that there needs to be more done. And can't even remember the last time I missed a planning commission meeting, and you guys are fantastic. I see how hard you work at everything. And I see some planning commission folks that don't care to be, challenged or feel like the work they've done is going by unnoticed. It's not going by unnoticed. And you guys are very important people in the way the world spins here with the council, but there isn't always agreement, which doesn't mean that's a closed door. It just means we need to move a little farther into things. And so I am in support of Rona's position, and I feel like not against condos, but feel that there's more to be seen and more to bring us together rather than to have the group that doesn't and the group that does.
Yeah, clear.
Yeah. I just want to start by thanking
everyone, every single person for their comments either tonight or that you've submitted. All these comments, I recognize all of them, no matter where you're coming from, is rooted in a shared love in our community. And I see it and I feel it. I do think that for those who are commenting who are not in favor of this proposal, I sense an undercurrent of fear. And I'm not saying that in a dismissive tone. I get it. Change is hard and change is scary. We love this community, and that fear is underscored by the thought that once you lose something, you can never get it back. And this community is so special, you don't want to lose that thing, whatever that thing is. I get it. The fear of unintended consequences, that's big time as well. And I get that. It's really easy to assume. I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud. It's really easy to assume, frankly, that the profit motive is the underlying motivation for all of this, and that this is just some big old Trojan horse that's going to allow unfettered development in our classic single-family residential zone with nothing but $900,000 deluxe condos popping up on every single street corner. I get it. At moments, I've catastrophized about that as well. But I don't necessarily agree on those counts. One of my considerations, frankly, in living my life is at heart, assume good intent unless proven otherwise. You can call it naive. I call it a great way to live. The Planning Commission, I know, operated not only with good intent in crafting this, but also they're smart people, their minds that weighed potential positive outcomes with unintended consequences, and they crafted an ordinance reflecting that. See the binding site plans and all of that. So cutting to the chase, yes, I do believe someone's going to buy these units as a second home and live in it 4 weeks out of the year. Someone's going to do that, absolutely. But I also think that this is a mechanism that could be a tool more than any other I've seen in a while that could provide folks with the means to step up to that, not only first, but second or third, or maybe even fourth ring of home ownership. Because right now we have units that Mend is offering, that's that first rung, and then you don't see anything until that seventh rung. It allows that missing middle. And I want to thank Allison and Stephen for offering those numbers, which to me feels kind of like proof of concept for what we're talking about here. I mean, what we're looking at, what I think we're all trying to look at are results, is what we're proposing to do. Will it work? And there's nothing that's 100% for sure in this world, but the numbers are really encouraging. So that's why I'm voting yes for this.
I guess I like, go ahead, Ed, you want to say something?
I mean, I would echo a lot of what Clint said. He's so well spoken and so well put together.
That's just tonight.
I mean,
Broken clock's right
we are
twice a
speaking
day.
to the radio, the voice.
Yeah.
But you know, I would first like to echo what Clint had to say at the beginning of of his words, in that I have read every single comment letter, and I have read those who are in favor and those who are opposed. I have read absolutely everyone, and other than the ones that came in during my workday when I literally can't reply to email, I have responded to every single one as well. And that is really important to me. And those people are being heard. And I think there's some dissonance in understanding in that being heard does not mean you necessarily are agreed with. And there is a difference there. And that is a concept that is misunderstood sometimes amongst our deliberations and the way that we dialogue on these topics. And I think that it's a very distinct difference, and people need to understand that. Just because we don't always agree with someone doesn't mean we haven't heard them and that we haven't listened. And I need to make that very clear. You are definitely being heard, whether or not the outcome is what you want. All of that said, this is an incredible opportunity for our community, for us to be thinking outside of ourselves, for us to be inclusive in our decision-making process, to create opportunities for those who do not have them now. And a lot of the comment letters that we received that were in opposition of this currently, that said, hey, we're open to this, but please kick the can down the road for the next year and a half. A lot of the reason for their hesitancy was that we don't have anything that proves that this is going to work. And I say, absolutely not. That is not true. We absolutely know how this is going to work.
We have people who work in the industry in our community. We know what the selling numbers are for condominiums versus single-family homes in our community. We know the numbers, and we know that this is an opportunity for people to get their foot in the door of ownership, create their own personal wealth, create equity, and create livelihood in our community where they currently do not have that opportunity. And I think we owe our community as a whole to provide this opportunity for them to think outside of ourselves and not be the haves and think about the have-nots and have this opportunity in our toolbox as soon as possible because we already know it works.
Yeah.
So I just like to say that I've been struggling with this thing ever since I sat down, first planning commission, we guys talked about it. Whether it was displacement, whether it was second homes, opportunity, whether we're listening to people. And I have to say that I've heard from folks myself and a lot. And I have pretty much agree with Ann on that part, is that they were heard. We just didn't agree. I mean, so there is that critical difference. And I think that's really important to note that, yes, you spoke and we heard you. It's just that we didn't go, we had a decision to make. So I think, and I feel like very truly that the community is got the opportunity to be here and to be present and to contribute and be engaged. It isn't like we're going to agree with it, but we definitely will engage with you. So it isn't like we're trying to shut. I don't feel we're shutting people out at all. I think this has been the most receptive, one of the most receptive administrations as far as trying to get notices out, the serve list. It's got 1,000 people on that thing. You can know exactly what's going to happen in this city every week. So, I mean, but I know about the disagreement and I know about the fear. I spoke the last week when I finally got back from Alaska. I spoke to 2 people on different ends of this thing, and it was very valuable to do that. So I think that we spent our time trying to bring things together and hear what people had to say. And I have to keep coming in as much as, I mean, I was born in this town, for crying out loud. So
How many years ago?
Trump that.
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
20 years.
But I feel it comes back to what Drew said is what they're after. They put it down, you sort of got to siphon this down or filter this down to what this is about, what it provides. And that's really why I've vacillated, but I'm a yes vote, because I think I've got reservations, huge ones, but I still think they're overridden by what the good this thing could do. So that's my piece.
Travis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the opportunity here being at home, and I guess you guys would probably be able to see me this whole time, be able to scratch so many notes and look down and pay attention and listen. And it's like, I just want to throw them all out the window at this point. I do want to say thank you to all those that physically showed up at the fest hall. I mean, we did a poor job communicating that event, honestly. And I'm sorry,
Travis, promise.
Zoom put a bubble up in your face.
Zoom did that?
Someone did that.
Yeah.
Someone.
Continue.
Okay, so we do so many things right. I think that we may have not done that one well. We had a great opportunity to get the whole community out. I was disappointed that there were a couple of council members that weren't in attendance. I'm thankful for the ones that were there, because that was the community's opportunity to speak to the council and give us your position. And like someone said, it was definitely people that were not for this, even in the near term or long term. But by the way, those opportunities in town halls are for you to convince us to vote your way. Let's all be like, work together, and we're there to listen, by the way. But this wasn't rushed since 2022, and we've had several council members that have been on this council since 2022, and to keep kind of pushing us down the road and asking more questions from a council side, I feel like there's been ample opportunity for people to have an understanding of what this is. With that said, it wasn't rushed in the way that Zeke did ask for a town hall, and Sharon also said that was a great opportunity, and we had the town hall. So I just want to make sure that, and with Rona, I believe kind of throwing the city under the bus a little bit about the city not listening, I think we do listen, as we've heard from Ann and Zeke, and I've listened and responded to emails for and against this. This was something that's, we're listening to both sides. I've responded to people for it and against it. And I think that it's unfair and it diminishes this council and this city listening to its community, because I think we do. I believe we do. And so I just want to say thanks to everybody for no matter which way this goes. And like everyone has said, this is my first time in my first term, a pretty contentious ordinance that's really has a lot of people stepping out and communicating with us. I think this is really great. And thank you all.
Right. Thank you, everyone. And again, all
I'd
of
like
you,
to add something.
Sure.
I've been struggling to find the words of what I was going to say tonight. And like Zeke said, I mean, I was elected to this position, and I want to do right by the community and everyone who's voiced their opinions on this ordinance. And yeah, I've lived here for 40 years too. And if I wasn't able to buy my house that I did 6 years ago, I would be looking at a condo. And yeah, I mean, it brings up a lot of emotions. But yeah, I mean, everyone's concerns and, just what this ordinance is trying to accomplish, I think it will do a lot of good for the community.
Thanks, Shane.
I guess I want to say one more thing at the end, which is that, the idea of listening but not agreeing. I think I listened and I did agree. I mean, that's the difference between me and other council members. It's not that I'm just like, I'm not a pushover. And it's not that, a bunch of people told me what they think and I have to come in here and now I have to do what they want. I actually do agree that we could be more thoughtful about how these are integrated into our neighborhood, how we control various aspects of it, how we deal with something called the, I don't even know, it's something about code. Somebody wrote me about that. I think we could be more thoughtful. So I just want to make that super clear.
I think that clarification is really important, Rona, and I'm glad that you bring up those important aspects that are important to you and the constituents that are speaking with you. I think that it's really important to make sure that we are talking about things that are very different than what is associated with condo ownership. If there are code regulations that our community members would like our planning commission and our city council to address, we absolutely have an avenue for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that work. We can add more work to the planning commission docket for review, just like we have done that with building height when it has created an issue within our community. And we felt that it was necessary to readdress building height. And we did that. We brought it through the planning commission as soon as it became an issue in our community. And that is a great path for those types of items. However, it is not a good reason to hold up an ownership topic based on code regulations that may need to have some further discussion.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to adopt ordinance 1695, common interest ownership.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Zeke. I think we've had our discussion, haven't we?
I will call the question.
All right. I don't see anybody. I think we're all ready to just lay it out there. So all those in favor, let me see your hands. So we've got 5, all opposed, and we've got 2, 5-2, it passes. Thank you all for your input. We will now move on to a partnership funding agreement. Selby.
Sure, thank you. Actually, I'm gonna ask Matt Cade to speak to this.
Thank you all.
if he would.
Thank you.
He seems like he's here and prepared us.
Yeah, he was hiding, but. What's
There's a bunch of people here.
Yeah, well, it's like-
Yeah, empty out.
Okay.
Sit down. So when I first came to Leavenworth, I've been to Munich. That's the only part in Bavaria that I ever went to. I came to Leavenworth and I was walking around. I'm like, where's the Glockenspiel? Like a Bavarian town should have a Glockenspiel. Then I moved here and became your city administrator. And I'm like, where's the Glockenspiel? There should be a Glockenspiel here. There's a cool cuckoo clock in the fest hall, but no Glockenspiel. But turns out there is a Glock.
There is one.
Yeah, there's one.
It just
It's
hasn't worked.
non-functional.
It just hasn't worked for a while.
It hasn't worked, and I knew something was behind those two doors that are out where the glockenspiel is. I'd never seen it operate myself, even though we've had our house here 15 years. And it was interesting to bring that up because I thought it was just not an achievable project for us, which I'm very fortunate how it all lined up so well. I have to compliment my neighbor, Tom Phillips, who's not here, but he's mentioned quite a bit in all these documents that you have, resolution, the partnership agreement that hopefully will be approved. Tom Phillips was the one that brought it up last October. We were having dinner with he and his wife, wife Carol and I have dinner with them frequently. And Tom says, Matt, what's going on with that glockenspiel? And I'm thinking, Tom, I don't know anything about that. And it was nice because it just progressed from there. He says, well, I want to make it happen. And I said, okay, Tom, I'll find out who owns the building. And that led to where this opportunity is now, with the Schickies that own that building, being so generous with the fact that they were very much in favor of this thing. They really wanted it. They're very supportive. They've done so much to accommodate this transition to where they donated everything that's in there. The personal property is the museums, the Upper Valley Historical Society. And then they, same day, minutes later, turned around and signed a lease, as you would have seen documented in the resolution and everything, that it's for 10 years at first. But we have an option, our option to renew it for 9 more 10-year options, so for 100 years, essentially, is when that blockage will operate, which we're very excited about. It's great, the history and everything that goes behind it. If you had asked me about it, maybe I would have looked into it a little bit more, but maybe you could have been credited, Sylvie, but Tom Phillips gets the credit for bringing it up, and here it is right now. So I'm really excited to be behind it. Tom Phillips has been leading the charge. You will see in the papers that you saw, he has a firm that he operates as a general contractor. He doesn't have any he just works with subcontractors. He brought them all together. He's been down there painting, applying paint, doing all kinds of things, clearing the food from all of this stuff. He's in there grinding it away. So thank goodness for Tom Phillips. I couldn't have done it all. I just kind of made it possible by clearing all the obstacles in front of Tom, but he just steamrolled right over it. So we're on our way to being there. It is going to operate. If I will guarantee you, Tom will make sure that that thing operates for forever. That thing is going to operate very well. We'll take care of the bird problem because that is what happened. The birds got in there, and I understand from his name is Chris Scheimer. Yes, Scheimer. Chris was the last one to operate it, and he said he gave up. The birds got in there too much. They gummed it all up, kept stopping it, freezing the doors, and I guess it stayed open operating. He just shut that thing down because he was tired of it, because nobody had any money to support it. And they tried really hard. But Tom, I believe, solved the problem. Very confident in that, and very excited about it, as many of the people, everyone that I've ever talked to within the city, outside the city, that knows about it. So they're all very, very glad it's going to come back. There we go. I didn't know I could talk like that, but just kind of open it up. I spoke, so sorry about that.
So it's the-
What would you like to do?
So it's a $10,000 request for using lodging tax dollars to support the Leavenworth Upper Valley Historical Museum. I think it's a $40,000 project. Is that it?
It is, but actually it has decreased, which is fortunate. One of the subcontractors, Tom knew this might happen. A lot of the subcontractors they work with, these are big projects that he works on. And they're multi-million-dollar projects and things. So these subcontractors are basically contributing something on how the total cost is all the way down to 35,000. So far, there may be a few more that contribute also, but we just don't know. So the 10,000 that we're requesting is approximately 30% of the total cost. So we're not asking for the whole amount. We're really confident that we will raise the remainder of the funds. So I think we'll do that one.
Okay. So that's the request.
Matt, I don't know, I'm gonna miss this when I was reading the reports. Do they have a timeline on this?
They do. It's mentioned in there that the goal was autumn leaf. I don't think we're gonna hit that goal. I do feel extremely confident that we will be operating by the first Oktoberfest weekend. That is almost assured that will happen. It's awesome. Yeah, we're really excited working with a lot of things. Tom wants to make sure again that when it operates, it's just gonna continue on operating 7 days a week. And it's interesting. Oh, I thought it would be too loud for the 3 tenants that are in that building right there. I talked to one of the tenants. He said it. He had his earphones on and he heard this noise because we didn't operate the music a little bit to make sure, see if the speaker sound system was working. And it was going. And he says, it was like it was coming from outside. And he's right below it, which is amazing because it's in a big cavernous attic space like this, just like sitting there in the middle of this room. You'd think it would just vibrate all over, but apparently that speaker's got a lot of sound deadening material around it that just prevents that from happening, which I'm really pleased that those 4 tenants would have to be listening because it's an hour. He was not disappointed at all. So that was good. That was good news. So I was glad for that. So I think even the tenants, yeah.
Well, I think it's great to preserve history and this is a good way to spend lodging tax money.
Good.
What I think.
The Shickies down below there, not even then, it was Nancy Monaco. I finally met Nancy Monaco. And they, right there in the corner. I think people here, and them, her husband owned a store down there, and she said people would continually come in and ask them, what happened? Like, it's not operating. People have been coming here for years, generations, and it'll be a great welcoming thing when it comes back to Leavenworth. We're really glad. I'm glad to be just a part of it. It was easier than I thought. I was almost parties for this season.
I would entertain a motion.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve a partnership funding agreement with the Upper Valley Historical Society for reimbursement grant not to exceed $10,000.
Second.
Well, Sharon and Rhoda co-seconded. All those in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. We skip 14.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the support.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for all your work.
It'll be, it's gonna go. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Number 15, this is back to Andy, isn't it? Or should I give this one to Maggie?
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. This is change order number 1 for the Glacier Parking Lot P6 improvement project. As you probably read in the write-up, the bulk of this cost for the change order is coming from this very large boulder field that was identified during construction. Can't reiterate enough how big these voids really were. This sounds like historically it was a boulder dumping field. We understood it to be more of a like household waste dumping, which did occur, but it sounds like that was actually more of the surface. Because he's looking at me, you probably know more of the history there.
I did talk to Adam.
But there, all sorts of interesting things have been identified out there, burn piles at the surface, anyway. But the boulder field is really our biggest concern here. So in order to mitigate We were trying to prevent differential sediment across the parking lot. We have historically had, like, I guess a sinkhole is the best way to describe it, but like a 6-inch diameter holes that appear in the parking lot. And we really thought that was more due to household waste and the sediment of that, but really these are like very large diameter voids. So this is why we proposed having the main concrete slab poured over the top of that whole boulder area, just to prevent differential settlements along the parking lot. And that accounts for $42,000 of the $53,000 change order. The other items that are included in this change order are a larger valve vault lid for the lift station, so that we have better access for our crew to get in. An additional electrical vault that was required by the PUD for the new electrical service that we have on site. And a very small, like a $168 charge for remote for a sound cutter. That summarizes what all is included in this change order, and this is all paid by the parking enterprise fund.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Wait, Andy, so
No.
the city's responsible for the whole $53,000 or only $42,000?
The whole 53,
Okay.
42 is just from the link concrete.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute change order number 1 to the Glacier Parking Lot Improvement Project construction contract with CRCI.
KRCI.
Huh?
KRCI.
Oh, it is. KRCI, LLC in the amount of $53,532.36.
Second.
Moved by Sharon, seconded by Ann. Any other questions?
I just have a general question as far as construction timeline goes. A lot of the construction that's happening right now is very building shaking in the local neighborhoods. And I only say that because I'm 2 blocks away and my whole house shakes.
No way,
Sometimes
really?
While I'm sitting in my office, my computer will just move on my desk and I'm just out
We're
of
having earthquakes.
just
didn't
out
you
of
know?
sheer curiosity, how long is that gonna keep going?
We should primarily be done with that this week.
I was literally in a video meeting and my computer was moving and I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't last super long.
Yeah, you probably saw that mountain that they had.
Yeah.
They described it as a hill, but I think it's actually more a mountain.
Mountain.
Yeah.
And really, that was all the subgrade prep that they were doing, and they should be finishing the proof roll this week if they haven't already.
Awesome. Just
Pack
curious.
up your knickknacks for a little while.
That is something else. Damn, why's your video glitching?
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, let me see your hand. Again, passes unanimously. And 16, also in.
Yes, these are 2 change orders for the wastewater phase 3 project. And just as a reminder, this is the US Rural the USDA Rural Development Grant that we received for the collective wastewater improvement. Change order number 6 is the additional cost for a custom liner for the Edelweiss sewer line between 9th and 10th Street. So in summary, during construction, when they cambered the line, it's identified that there was a difference in inside pipe diameter along that line, which is actually quite uncommon. That's not something we would intentionally do, at least nowadays. So in order to actually line that section, they had to make a custom liner that had 2 different diameters and had a transition piece in the middle. So in order to build that liner itself, it was more expensive than they originally did for that section. So this is an increase in cost for that liner. That's change order number 6. And change order number 7 is due to additional excavation that needed to take place in that alley near 10th Street for that same section of Main. When they originally excavated, there was planned to be a manhole. So it's a little bit interesting, but the 9th to 10th Street section actually flows from 10th back to 9th. So 10th is the upstream end of that sewer main in the alley. And when they originally excavated where the manhole was planned to be, it was a really tight utility corridor. And so ultimately it was determined that the manhole was infeasible to install, and it was also too tight to install a clean out there. So we ended up moving the clean out further down the line, which is still upstream of any of the sewer service connections we have. So it still serves our need in order to clean our line. But this additional cost is due to the additional excavation there. And while you'll see this dollar is really high, it's primarily due to the very dense utility corridor that we have through there. So it did take them multiple days in order to dig down and expose the sewer main to that location.
Hey, I'd entertain a motion.
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute change order number 6 for the wastewater collection and treatment facility improvements phase 3 project construction contract with Allied Trenchless in the amount of $33,035.90.
Second. Moved by Clint, seconded by Sharon. Any other questions?
Awesome. Get in there.
There we go. All those in favor, let me see your hands. Again, passes unanimously.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute change order number 7, the wastewater collection and treatment facility improvements phase 3 project construction contract with Allied Trenchless in the amount of $44,410.88.
Second.
Moved by and seconded by Sharon. All those in favor, let me see your hands.
It's on.
And it passes unanimously. All right, number 17, Maggie.
Yeah, so this is a supplemental agreement for AHBL. They're the consultant that we have been working with for reviewing analysis of our urban growth area. And I'm kind of new to all this, so bear with me. But I believe we had this amount budgeted, the 37,000, it's already been in the budget, but we just never amended the agreement. So that's what we're doing tonight, just so they can continue with moving that project forward.
Questions?
The Leavenworth City Council authorizes the mayor to sign supplemental agreement number 3, AHBL Incorporated, for term extension and increasing the not to exceed amount to a total of $67,500.
Second.
Thank you again.
Sharon.
She didn't even finish the sentence.
Well,
I saw the period.
You should learn from that. All those in favor, let me see your hands. Travis, are you against
Yo-ho.
one? Oh, okay. It passes unanimously. Andy, we got one more, Gray and Osborne.
We're making up time.
Yeah, I think this is our last supplemental agreement for the night. This is supplemental agreement number 1 with Grant Osborne for the water treatment plant and well site fencing improvements. So this is specifically additional design and permitting services that are necessary due to the location of the fence in close proximity to the shoreline. This falls under the shoreline master program. Okay. And this involves additional permitting, mitigation and monitoring plan for the trees that are to be removed, a cultural resource survey, a property line survey, and a geologic site assessment to be completed in order to do the fence install. And really, this is just due to an expansion in scope of that project. And so this is necessary in order to construct the fence in the proximity to the shoreline that it's in. And I do want to be clear, I think I made it confusing in the write-up because this supplemental agreement is supplementing a different contract than what we have multiple contracts with Grant Osborne, and I know I've kind of run through this before when we have these master contracts with them. This is an additional $85,301 for this portion. As you'll see in the motion, there's a much larger dollar amount.
Right.
The rest of that portion is not from this project. This is just extending the overall master contract with them to that not to exceed amount. So if you have questions on that, please don't hesitate to ask, because I think I wrote it in a very confusing way.
So we're not building a fence for $145,000.
No, yeah.
Good.
The 60K is already budgeted across multiple funds as on-call.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
I figured it's something like that.
From the budget amendment perspective, I'll just be adding this 85 through and specific to the water fund for this project.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute, let's be clear though, we're not building a fence for this amount.
I know,
No.
that's what I was,
This is just the engineering.
No, this is the engineering.
I know, this is.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It almost sounded like the write-up, it kind of let you around.
I just want to make clear that this was not gonna be.
No, I've got two.
I know, I just.
Construction too, but that's not enough.
So, all right,
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute supplemental agreement number 1 to the 2024 on-call Public Works Engineering Services Professional Services Agreement with Gray and Osborne for the additional design and permitting services for the security fencing for Wellfield and Camp Pond project, increasing the not to exceed amount to a total of $145,000, $145,301.
Second.
No one can.
Sharon, no one can beat Sharon. Shane finally learned he just has to make the motion, so.
No, this is a really personal one for me.
I know, you have really,
Yeah.
yep. All right, all those in favor, let me see your hands. And it passes unanimously once again, and now we're at council reports, Sharon.
Council report. Yeah, first of all, I want to say, because there's nobody else in the room,
Well, you are being recorded on Zoom.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't think somebody from the audience should be able to verbally attack a council member.
I agree.
And that's all. Okay.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you all for who nodded at that.
I about went over the counter here. If I didn't think I'd rip my pants, I probably would have. Okay, anyway, on the 6th of October, I went to the National Night at Erms. It was out in the field. They had a helicopter there, the sheriffs, the fire department, everybody was there. And they also had a table of all kinds of free things for the kids to just pick up and take with them. Nice things, not, like junky things that the wheels would fall off when you walked across the field. So I thought it was a great night. I wish that more people had come. It wasn't packed at all. Yeah, but the advertising wasn't great. I attended on the 7th, the mayor's breakfast at Crystal's. It was delicious, and it's always fun to get together with most everybody. The 9th, Ronan and I met with Andy and Selby out at Chumstick Highway to the building thing there. Going someplace and seeing it and being able to ask questions on the spot is so much better than just reading something. So I'm probably going to be pestering people to go out a lot more. Because then when you're talking, I can see it and I know what you're talking about. Okay, on this morning, actually, I went to the hospital, because I needed to be in there. But the hospital has pavers, all around, and they have Royal Lady pavers. So Linda Bradshaw and I went out, had our picture taken by our pavers. Oh. And so that was just kind of fun. It's kind of Mickey Mouse, but kind of fun. And then let's see. Okay, I already did that. And I also wanted to mention on Osborne Playground, especially now that it's finishing up, please, if you drive by, if you see anybody in there other than the workmen, call the sheriff, stop, whatever is the appropriate thing to do. Because the other day when I was talking to John, when they lay that surface so it's easy for wheelchairs to travel on, there's a glue that takes quite a while. And John said if anybody gets in there on that, I think it's a $40,000 thing, but it's really expensive. And it'll ruin it, and they'll have to start again with that particular thing. A family and their mother, dad, and their kids were already found in there.
Really?
Yes, and John was trying to figure out how they got in, but if where the building is and the fence comes, there was just enough room there for him to squeeze actually through and come on back out. So I think they've got that fixed now. But I'm always watching and listening because I've got a pretty good view. I stay up late at night to hear if anybody's in there. And I don't know whether, one time I thought, it was during the day, and I thought late evening, I thought somebody was in there. So I went over to it with my dog and flashlight. And I said, "You're not going to get in trouble, but get out of there." Nobody came. I said, get out of there. No, and I said, okay, I guess I have to call the sheriff. Nobody came. So it must have been something I saw move. But please, if you see anybody, have them, because I don't know now if we're going to make the community
We're supposed to know today.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna tell you the worst case scenario. We don't think we're going to be able to open for the block party.
I didn't think so.
And we will see how it goes.
Okay, so if you see anybody in there, please, find a way to shoo them out, yeah.
Yeah, and Sharon will follow up to make sure the contractor secures that site as well.
Well, they had, the last Friday, when they left their big white truck parked, so I couldn't see it. And so I asked them, could you guys just like scoot that about 15 feet forward so I can be able to see it? And they did before they left.
Good.
I probably shouldn't say anything to them, but I was totally blocking my view of what goes on at night.
You're the neighborhood watch, so that's good.
I am.
Yeah. I think maybe, do we need to put a word to Pacific Security to kind of pay a little more attention to that?
We did wonder whether we should put somebody in there overnight.
So you're talking
Once that,
Maybe that when the glue's down, it might
Yeah.
be worth doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Look into that.
I mean, we got them.
Thanks for mentioning that, because we had
Yeah.
talked about it, yeah. And, I guess that's all. Unless you want me to rub through this and see if, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Right?
Second.
Killing me, Shane.
It's on, Shane. It's on.
I don't really have much of a report other than, I was sad to miss the National Night Out. Because it was really cool that it was actually at Leavenworth this
Yeah,
year, because I've
yeah.
been to it in different locations in Kashmir, down in East Wenatchee. And it's a really great event, and I was sad to miss it this year. Because it was at the same time as the community farmers market farm to table dinner. And I already had ticket to that. So I was sad to miss that, but the farm to table dinner was awesome as usual, and I always love supporting that nonprofit, so. That's my report.
Me? Well, I haven't been around much. But I missed, had all kinds of designs to make that national night out, except I was packing for Alaska, and I had somebody I was married to said, you're not going anywhere except.
You should have packed earlier.
That was mentioned also, but. So anyway, when I did get back, we were gone 2 weeks, drove up. Helped my son and his fiance pack out of Fairbanks. We drove back down, and then had a week here where I was able to connect with. I wanted to kind of catch up with. That's why I missed that. Missed the meeting, the public discussion of the condos. My son lives in a dry cabin where there's you didn't have running water, let alone internet. So there was no luck of trying to tie into that. But when I did get down, I had a good chance to sit down with Brian Craig and Allison Miller and kind of got that sense. So that was time worth spent. And then my son got married Saturday in Lopez Island. So that's my report.
You mean Isaac?
Yeah.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's
awesome.
Wow.
It was a while. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was with her for a long time.
Yeah. They were.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Jane.
I don't have much to report either, other than I was able to attend the condo workshop and I thought it was, I got some pretty good insight, and I'm glad that, Sherry and Simon Farivar and Cam West were there to provide their expertise, on the matter. And then I would also like to express my gratitude for everyone who, Upper Valley Aquatic Boosters and the PRSA for supporting the pool levy and helping get that pushed through. The numbers look good, so.
Yahoo.
Yeah.
That's the end of my.
More money.
No. Oh, no.
Well, I was with Sharon at the walkthrough, which was really interesting. I also did two other things. I have maybe three, if I count Selby coming over too. So my yard is where I usually have meetings. And so Selby and I got together and chatted there, and it's easier for me to do that now because it's hard for me to be other places and be comfortable. But anyway, so that was great. I feel like I got caught up to speed and understand some things better. And then I had two other meetings. One was with 3 people from the Housing Advisory Committee. I think Zeke
Yeah.
and Clint are the 2 representatives from our council on that committee. And I wonder if you guys could talk sometime about what happens in there, because I'm trying to remember now if, since you've been on those committees, if you've ever given us updates. And the reason I met with them is the reason I met with them is because one of them told me that she had brought a new idea in, which could take a percentage of a tax and apply it to housing issues. And I was super fascinated by that, and I didn't understand that well. So I'd seen Sharon that morning. She came over. There were 6 of us there, 3 from the housing committee, me, you, and somebody else. I invited Clint, who wasn't able to come. And I'm really interested in those kinds of options, and it sounds super interesting. It's Stacy who brought that.
Oh, Stacy Heard.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's something they're doing in Spokane, and it could be very promising for us. So I'd like to know can either of you guys, update us a little more? That'd be great.
You bet.
And then I also, with Stacy and Maggie, went to Stacy's house, because Stacy has written for the last 4 years, since 2020, has been writing about issues in Pinegrass and not feeling listened to. And Travis, I do need to say that out loud. I don't think I'm throwing the city under the bus. I need to say that there's a person who Maggie then finally, and our new building inspector, building official, went there, and Stacy had contacted me, and so I went to see what it was about too. And maybe Maggie's going to talk about that a little bit, but she definitely had valid issues. And I think the city's gonna, with you there, Maggie, I think that you promised to do a little bit more than has been done for that resident who ended up actually saying that she wanted to sell her house, and she ended up sobbing. So that's how upset she was. So when I bring up that people are upset, I'm not kidding. I'm trying to explain. There's people who truly don't feel listened to. And she is serving on the Housing Advisory Committee, brought this excellent idea before us, and I want her treated with respect. So maybe Maggie can talk about that a little bit, and what, maybe what you're planning to do to help those guys out on Pinegrass.
You want me to do that right now, or when I do my?
Way you do your report. That's fine. Yeah.
Hold on. Yep. Sorry, I've got a video thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, the only thing I had was attending the town hall at the fest hall. I think we covered that pretty well this evening, and we've all seen some of the letters, and I think it goes without saying, I don't believe that we promoted that very well. For good or bad. Maybe it was hurried, but I felt like even the feedback for the people that were there barely knew about it. So just for future, we really want to get people out, right? Sharon, that's always a big concern of yours, right? Is getting people there. And I don't know how many people that you were able to get there or even knew about it, or if it just didn't seem like it was promoted very well for a big deal. So it's my 2 cents. That's it.
All right. I don't have much to report. I'll just say I was up today, this morning, spent the morning up Electric City, Cooley Dam, and Grand Coulee, as part of my AWC. Went up there with the executive director, Deanna Dawson, and just to get, again, it's within my Central Washington district, being on the AWC board, and just to meet with small cities and hear what their issues are and kind of brainstorm how we could help more from the AWC. It was a lot of fun because there was some good stuff, good energy, and lots of good questions. And again, I think a responsive organization that they're feeling like there's some, there's, as much as we deal with issues and the things that we have no clue what these tiny communities that have no retail, basically,
Right.
And yet have the same infrastructure and issues that we have, and not near the resources. So it was good to be able to go with somebody who's got some ideas for them. So that's all I'll say. So
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I received 10 applications for the Public Works Director position.
Ooh, wow.
After first round interviews, the field was narrowed down to 3 finalists. One dropped out. So then there were 2. The final interviews will be conducted on Tuesday, August 27th and Thursday, September 5th. And I hope to be prepared to announce a new Public Works Director at or before your September 10th meeting. We received far fewer Community Development Director applications, and I expect to announce the new Community Development Director at your next meeting. Leavenworth local David Scott starts as our newest utility maintenance worker on Thursday, August 22nd, just in time for our block party. And block party preparations are well underway for